Thank you, sir. All right, I'm going to call this meeting of Tuesday, September 26, 2023 to order. We're going to begin with a salute to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Chapman, can you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Vance Clemens?
Here.
Ms. Batusky?
Here.
Mrs. Blomgren?
Here.
Mrs. Chaikin? Mr. Cormack?
Here.
Mrs. Cullen?
Here.
Mr. Russell?
Here.
Mr. Rice?
Here.
Mr. Word?
Here.
All right, moving on to public comment. Here we go. All right. All right. According to policy 903, public comment, which is limited to 3 minutes, should be directed to the presiding officer rather than individual board members, district employees, or members of the public. For confidentiality and privacy rights, specific comments regarding particular individuals must be communicated privately to the school board and superintendent via email at psdschoolboard@pennridge.org. And we begin with public comment.
The first speaker is David O'Donnell. The speaker after that is Layla O'Donnell.
David O'Donnell, Sellersville. I'm here to speak on policy 123.3. I'm a little surprised at the fact that this is making its way through to first reading already, despite the fact that you guys really had no bearing on even where you wanted the policy to be in the first place, let alone to make it far enough to start actually passing it through. I said at the last meeting how devastating this policy can actually be and how hurtful it is for the community at large. But even with the language you're trying to use, it doesn't actually address any known issue. We don't have this problem. In fact, the bodies that already regulate the PIAA and such, they already know that this problem doesn't exist. The isolated incidents that you could probably cite don't even belong to Pennsylvania in the first place. So the fact that you're trying to propose a policy that we already have guidance on in the first place to, make it more serious? Like, that doesn't make sense, and you're gonna cause a lot of kids who are going through this very difficult time in their lives, and a lot of which they're trying to understand their personal journey, and you're going to sit there and say, well, you know what? We need to know everything about you at this point. That's not your place. That's the place of their teachers, their administrators, the staff, in which case they already have plenty of guidance and everything to be able to handle such things. I urge you to stop making such policies that are deliberately going against those of the LGBTQIA. Like, it really makes zero sense. It's unnecessary, and we have plenty of things already in place to actually take care of these things. That's all.
And then Layla O'Donnell? Okay. Kevin Foster. And after Kevin is, I can't seem to do this. Oh, sorry. After that is Jane Kramer.
Kevin Foster, Hilltown. Tonight I wanted to speak about wasting Pennridge taxpayer money, cover-ups, and the new policy on the agenda. What is noticeable right off the bat is tonight there is no bill on the consent calendar, which what's referred to as the bills list, to pay our Harrisburg attorney. Last board meeting on August 28th, this board approved $160,000 to pay the Pennridge School Board attorney, Eckert Siemens. $160,000. What exactly is this money being used for? We are left to guess for ourselves since zero detail is provided, aside from the total number approved. What we do know is what this board is not focused on. They aren't focused on collapsing academic standards. They aren't focused on providing a healthy environment for our children to learn. They aren't focused on the colossal amount of wasted taxpayer money. What they are focused on is a culture war that seeks to divide the community solely for the political benefit of those on the stage and their allies running to replace them. I'm sure they have many public commenters lined up tonight to thank them for a policy that helps no one except Eckert Siemens by continuing to line their pockets. Tonight is just one of many examples of taxpayer money being routed to our attorneys to develop a policy that solves zero problems in Pennridge. How much did this all cost? We may never know, because what is interesting is that this board meeting, there is no bill for Eckert Siemens on the consent calendar, even though we have had another 2 months of Pennridge taxpayer money for Eckert to collect. Would Eckert Siemens and this board intentionally delay billing to avoid public scrutiny before an election? This afternoon at 2 p.m. at the Doylestown Courthouse, our taxes funded Eckert to defend a cover-up of illegal activity, removing books selected by politicians from bookshelves secretly in direct violation of the First Amendment of the Constitution, and then frantically covering up their actions. Instead of owning it, this board dispatched their attorneys to defend the cover-up, and we as taxpayers get to pay the enormous bill as a result. $160,000 on August 28th, and I can only imagine a similar bill that is being hidden from the public, which will appear on the October agenda 9 days before the election. This board and their allies are nothing but political activists intent on doing whatever it takes to divide the community. They'll spend unlimited taxpayer money to continue their partisan culture war at the expense of our students and our community. They'll even use it to cover up their actions. We all deserve better, and this November, we literally cannot afford more of the same.
Ms. Kramer, and then Laura Foster.
Jane Kramer, Sellersville. I'm a parent of a high school senior and a member of the LGBTQ community. I call on everyone in this room to be mindful of the language that we use as we discuss this policy regarding sports. I really haven't looked into it too much because it does seem like it's more of a Independence Law Center initiative than a real issue that's coming organically from Pennridge. So I don't really have much comment on it, other than I hope that the board and administration can be mindful of the impact that whatever policy is passed is going to have on actual students. We're seeing now that lack of mindfulness and really thinking through the impact of the bathroom policy is having a negative impact on LGBTQ students. There aren't enough single-use bathrooms in the high school, and the way that they're placed logistically makes it really difficult for kids to go to the bathroom. And also, I talked to several kids over the past few days. You know, they're also feeling like they don't want to go into a regular bathroom and risk being bullied, risk controversy. You know, they just are trying to keep their heads down and get through the day. So again, if we could be mindful that these are students of Pennridge that deserve protection just like all kids at Pennridge. I also ask as we consider some of these policies, are we taking bandwidth away from addressing real issues at Pennridge? One thing I've been hearing a lot of these first few weeks of school are an increase in bullying, increase in hate speech, and I'd really like to see the board and administration address hate speech. My understanding is the way that it's handled now in the district, there's really not the same kind of consequence that there would be for, fighting, physical fighting. And I would recommend to the board that really looking at how can we address this in a way that will reduce the occurrences of hate speech. Lastly, I just ask the board president and solicitor to also help people be appropriate during tonight's meeting, and to help them make sure that they're using the correct language. Thank you.
Laura Foster, and then Ross McClendon.
Hello, Laura Foster, East Rock Hill. Everything that I talk about here tonight can be found on ridgenetwork.org. You can go there for any of these documents. First, I'd like to thank the parents and the teachers for continuing to be supportive of our students as they work through this difficult environment that our board has created. I'd like to thank our board. Special thanks to NBC, Russell, Jordan, Dave, Bob, Christina, Ricky, and our fearless insurrectionalist Joan for making us the most extremist school board in the entire United States right now. Thank you for that, I appreciate it. So, look at this here. I don't know if you guys have heard of the Education Law Center. They're not a Christian contracted law center. This is a legitimate law center. 7 pages of why your policies are illegal on transgender sports. 7 pages. Don't worry, you'll get a copy of it. If you have problems reading it, you can ask your solicitor if they understand what Title IX is. If they don't, they can maybe reach out to Education Law Center and try to get educated on that. If even one of you took the time to talk to the queer students in our school, you would understand the damage that you have inflicted for policy over policy over policy that are discriminatory like this. If you have a problem with the law, join the Senate, not a school board. Many parents have voiced their opposition to illegal policies over and over, and we're tired of having to pay your attorney's fees. Can you just please stop doing this? If you don't understand, there are civics classes that can help you to understand this. A lot of parents have voiced their opposition to curriculum written or suggested by Vermillion. Jordan Adams claims to have all this knowledge and expertise. Mind you, he doesn't have a degree in education, and it shows. In reviewing the 9th grade social studies curriculum alone, here's an entire sheet of things that Jordan Adams did wrong or didn't pick up. Let me just go over some of them for you. All the Hillsdale 1776 curriculum lessons contain inaccurate historical content, concepts, and statements developed inappropriate for 9th graders. One of the resources, The American Government and Politics, the Joseph Bassett and John Pitney, all chapters. It's a college-level textbook. It's supposed to use in political science college courses, not developmentally appropriate for 9th grade. Also, this textbook did not go through Pennridge's textbook approval process. But you guys don't care about process, do you, right? No. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 resources are college-level reading. None of them are appropriate for 9th grade. But this guy, yeah, he's got it down packed. For those parents who have opted out of curriculum and have not opted out of Vermillion and have not received an appropriate response from the school district, you can come to me or go to ridgenetwork.org to get the appropriate response. Because I opt my child out does not mean I'm opting out of curriculum. It is your responsibility to identify the areas where Vermillion has had touch on the curriculum. Thank you.
Mr. McClendon. And after that, Mr. Carbonaro.
Ross McClendon, Hilltown. Another strange policy. no surprise, I think we all saw it coming. And it was mentioned earlier that the Independence Law Center wrote it. He didn't write it. Okay, you can admit it. It's all right to say that. Okay, to take credit for what you're doing. You can say that. The other policies, getting rid of all these things. Why don't you take some pride in banning books? You're doing it. That's what you're doing. But you won't say it. Okay. Anyway, the ILC is part of the PA Family Institute that falls under the DC-based Family Research Council, a hate group per Southern Poverty Law Center for being anti-LGBTQ.
Right.
Written by a hate group. Okay? The Hemphill School District in Lancaster is using an identical policy. So, what's that about community? Where's this community? You're worried about our students and our community? I don't think so. Okay, also, the total paid to Vermillion so far is $25,937.50. So, I don't know how many taxpayers there are. That's only 4 months. But I don't like hearing that, okay? Thank you.
Matt Carbonaro, after that, Janelle Benteke.
Good evening, Matt Carbonaro, Percy Borough. My public comment pertains to a couple of agenda items tonight. I am in support of a sports policy that separates biological boys from biological girls. This policy is similar to the bathroom policy that the board passed back in the spring, which I applauded them for. It is simple science. If you are born a boy, you should play in the boys' sports teams, and if you're born a girl, you should play on the girls' sports teams. Simple as that. We have seen real-life examples of what can happen when girls' sports are not protected. Last year, Riley Gaines, an American former competitive swimmer at the University of Kentucky, came to fame. While swimming in the 200-yard NCAA Freestyle Championship, Gaines tied for 5th place with the University of Penn swimmer Leah Thomas, a 6-foot, 4-inch intact male who competed in the women's division. Gaines talked about her experience not having to compete against biological man, but also to share some in the dressing room with him. I hope the board approves a policy for sports based on biological sex because I believe that this would be in the best interest of girls. It would keep Pennridge girls safe and it would enable girls to compete on a level playing field. Regardless of what happens tonight with the vote, members of this board have proven they are not zealots, as a member of this board alleged, but rather you are putting forth common sense solutions to keep them safe while providing reasonable accommodations. I would like to applaud the school board and teachers union for coming to a fair contract. The school is up and running and the sky isn't falling, unlike some would like to believe. There is a slate of school board candidates who claim to be independent, moderate, and non-political. Meanwhile, they hire someone from the outside Pennridge to be their campaign manager, a Democrat strategist who was a field organizer for the Democrats in the 2022 election cycle.
The man is in order. Please continue so we can get done with this. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Foster.
Don't be fooled by these candidates as they give speeches claiming to be moderate. If you want common sense solutions, vote for Protect Pennridge slate of candidates, 5 great candidates who are fiscally responsible.
Ms. Foster, please don't interrupt. Please,
All of us for this crap.
don't,
Interrupted.
please, no.
No, okay. Maybe Jordan will.
Please finish your comment, sir.
Okay. Who will make sure COVID draconian measures don't return? Who will protect students? Who will protect Pennridge's rights? Who will protect Pennridge from having boys entering girls' sports and bathrooms and vice versa? And who will make sure that books in the library are age appropriate? This is a choice election. Thank you.
Ms. Benteke. After that, Emily Guy.
I'm not sure there's no more screaming, because they talk about multiple topics when they speak, and then the second one of us say something on agenda that then,
Ms. Benteke.
well, just please hold them scream during my
Thank
speech.
you.
I
Ms.
appreciate it.
Benteke, I'm asking everyone to to be in order. We've been doing pretty well so far. Let's just stay in order, give everyone the opportunity to speak. Thank you very much. Ms. Montigny, your time.
Janelle Montigny, Hilltown. I actually hate public speaking, especially in such a hostile crowd as you just saw. Those watching at home miss a lot of the disruptions that take place here. Shouting, cursing, gestures, name-calling. It's sad and sickening to see this from the Hate Has No Home crew. That is why many choose not to speak or even come. I'm here tonight to bring a message of thanks to the board for a number of things, since lately you've been attacked nonstop. I want to begin with a very important recent accomplishment. Thank you for negotiating a good contract for our teachers. My boys have had great teachers at Seiler and Central, and they deserve the best. I hope that Pennridge continues to close the pay gap so we can retain the amazing staff and acquire new talented teachers. Thank you for following the science 2 years ago and making masks optional. They only have a negative impact on children, and our district's COVID numbers were the same or better than those given a choice, or not given a choice. With COVID mandates popping up across the country again, please continue to do what is right for our children in our district. Thank you for creating a policy to review books for age appropriateness. There is no reason for pornography or extremely sexually explicit books to be in our schools, and to be clear, it was. Any parent who hasn't seen the book Genderqueer, I encourage you to take a copy out of the library so you understand why it shouldn't be here. Anyone fighting to push highly sexual material on children is a groomer, plain and simple. Thank you for making the bathroom policy to require students to use restrooms that are biological sex. Every student should feel comfortable and safe when they're at school. Girls shouldn't have to worry about a biological boy in their bathroom or locker room. Thank you for beginning the process to add a policy that requires students to play sports with their biological sex. Girls' sports should be protected. There is a real and substantial biological differences between males and females. Girls should not be losing spots and even scholarships to boys who are naturally stronger and faster. Thank you for getting propaganda out of the classrooms. Every student should feel welcome in every classroom. A sign should not be needed to let particular students know they are supported. What does that say to students who are not a part of that group? What does that say about teachers without one? It's very divisive. Finally, thank you for bringing middle school baseball to Pennridge. Many of my son's friends played last year, and he looks forward to trying out this year. I'm grateful to the board for all these policies. I also appreciate all the time that school board members put in, away from their families, trying to make our district better. Everyone running for school board should be clear where they stand on all these issues. The Protect Pennridge candidates have given definitive answers on these topics. However, the Pennridge Community Alliance candidates have ignored questions and avoided taking positions. They instead talk in generalities and attack the board on one single issue. Voters need to be very careful because all the good that's been done here can be quickly undone. If candidates are hiding their positions, there is a reason. Thank you.
Emily Guy, and then Kim Gabillion.
Emily Guy, East Rock Hill Township. I wanted to reiterate my thanks to the board for addressing the issue of fairness and safety in school sports. There are some people in the community who keep saying, why do we need to address this if we don't have boys playing in girls' sports teams right now in Pennridge? I'd like to say that I appreciate that you aren't waiting for a certain number or a certain percentage of students to be affected before you act. You're here to protect our children, and if we can protect them before they are hurt, that's obviously way better than after the fact. You aren't PennDOT. You don't have to wait for a certain number of accidents at an intersection before you bother to put up a stop sign. Some naysayers in the community have gone so far as to say, why do we even have school sports? According to the National Center for Health Statistics data brief number 441 published by the CDC in August 2022, quote, sports team participation has been associated with increased levels of physical activity and improved physical and mental health among children and adolescents, end quote. We should absolutely encourage participation of students in activities that improve their physical and mental health. School sports also provide opportunities for children seeking scholarships. Title IX was created to protect girls and girls' sports. It has to do with biology, not identity. So to the board again, I say, thank you for holding the line for sanity and ignoring the rabble-rousers. It's called girls' sports for a reason, and those reasons have to do with biology, safety, and fairness, not feelings. Thank you.
Kim Gabillion, and then Josh Hogan.
Kim Badillion, Percy Borough. I listened to the last curriculum committee meeting, and I heard Mrs. Raber say that the proposed 7th and 8th grade RELA courses included on tonight's agenda were developed in collaboration among the curriculum supervisors, teachers, and Jordan Adams. I read through each unit, and I want to express my appreciation for the outstanding literature choices that are included. In 7th grade Unit 3, students will read The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. In 7th grade Unit 5, the students can choose among many outstanding selections, including The Call of the Wild, The Hobbit, Johnny Tremaine, The Secret Garden, and Treasure Island, among others. In 8th grade, Unit 3, the students will read The Man in the Red Bandana, the inspiring story of a 24-year-old who led 11 of the 17 survivors from the floors above the impact zone on the South Tower down to safety at the cost of his own life. And then in 8th grade, Unit 5, students get to choose between 2 books, one of which is Black Beauty. Thank you for providing students with such worthy literary selections. In regard to the proposed sex-based athletics policy, I applaud your desire to protect girls' sports at Pennridge. I was at Deep Run a couple of weekends ago watching little kids play soccer. Preschoolers at Deep Run are co-ed, and even at that age, the boys ran circles around the girls. They were more aggressive and faster, where the girls just stood there and half the time didn't go for the ball. So happily, Deep Run separates by sex at 1st grade, enabling girls to compete on a level playing field. Thank you for your proactive attempt to circumvent this issue and allowing girls to continue to seek scholarships and to play sports and to make friendships. So thank you for being proactive in that regard.
Josh Hogan, Leah Rash.
Josh Hogan, West Rock Hill Township. I also want to reiterate my support from the policy committee meeting for policy 123.3, the sex-based distinction in athletics. I want to start by actually addressing something I've just heard here tonight, which is, we should reject this because it's written by Independence Law Center. First of all, I consider that to be a form of ad hominem that's not attacking the policy itself, it's attacking the source of it. More importantly, it's not actually attacking the source of it. If people paid attention to the committee meetings, they would have heard the board discuss several large sections in here which are taken straight from PIAA bylaws as language, and there's a whole bunch of content which was pulled straight from our bathroom policy. So this is an amalgamation that I consider to be literally created by the board in real time. We basically watched it happen. The main thing that I want to say when it comes to my support for this policy is reasonable accommodation section 2 being stricken. I kicked myself for why did I not think of that? I think you have this prioritization for reasonable accommodations when you're on a school board and looking at policy. I've read so many drafts of different policy. It's always about the accommodations, you have to spell them out. And so I said at the committee meeting, hey, let's make this at minimum as strong as the PIA bylaws. And I really appreciated that you guys discussed that, and it sounded like it was going to move in that direction. When this policy was posted and I saw that, it really jumped out to me and suddenly made sense. Wait, this actually really clears it up. This policy is to protect girls' sports and nothing else. There was some discussion about, making things kind of the same across the sexes in terms of when they can decline to participate and things like that. Really what we should be doing, what our imperative is right now at this time in history, is to protect girls' sports and girls' spaces. So I really appreciated that distinction. And I think fundamentally when I stepped back and looked at this, I tried to come up with, okay, where do I need an accommodation? For what sport do I want to make an accommodation where a boy could play with a girl? Every single thing I could come up with, I thought, well, that girls' team should be co-ed. We should call that co-ed. There was no situation where I thought of, yes, boys should play on a girls' team, but the girls' team should not be co-ed. So long story short, I think that that's a great improvement. I kick myself for not even thinking of it, but thank you for that. Thank you overall for taking the policy on, despite what's being said about it, this is timely, it's happening right now. We're watching it all across the state, so I appreciate you guys being proactive with it. Thank you.
Leah Rash, and then Stephen Rash.
Leah Rash, Hilltown Township.
It's good to see that with the staffing issues and the transportation issues and no acting superintendent while you were working on a contract with the teachers, you took the time to make sure no trans students in this school even think about playing sports. I'm glad that that was your priority. Your lack of understanding around transgender and gender dysphoria is evident in this policy. The wording you use, the assumptions you make, it's riddled with just uninformed wording and categorizations. As leaders, it'd be good if you took the time to understand, got real data around it, even data that you hear, you should question it, find out where it's coming from, what do you consider viable sources. If you spoke to any of these kids, you find out that they're really trying their best to not stand out in this school. Many of them don't drink water all day, so they don't even have to use a bathroom. Yet you continue to put targets on their backs. This was a wasted opportunity as leaders. You could have shown our students how to be helpful even if you don't agree or you don't understand. You could have showed them to seek understanding because you can still help someone even if you're not friends. It's a beautiful lesson to have. When you target one group of students for being different, you tell every student who feels different for any reason that what they can expect from you is judgment and condemnation, not understanding. And as leaders setting that tone in this district with schools full of children, it's very dangerous. I think that's it. I played sports here at Pennridge every season, every year. And so girls sports does mean a lot to me, but that doesn't mean that I think there's like one way in either direction. I feel like as a district, we should be easily able to work with these students when they ask. Maybe there isn't a viable solution at that time, but we should at least be open to the conversation and try. There's nothing wrong with that. Thank you.
Stephen Rash and Ben Bridgewater. Ben Bridgewater is next.
Stephen Rash, Town Township. You're up there to be
Mr.
problem
Rash, hang on
solver.
one second. The time didn't reset yet. Sorry.
I won't go over.
No,
I
just,
know,
you
but
only have 30 seconds left.
Thank you.
Serve your time.
So you're supposed to be problem solvers up there, and I know that you do attempt to solve some problems, but we're focusing on a problem that's not there with the sports policy when our rankings just came out again, and we dropped from 145 last year to 214. Central Bucks, just down the road, they pay similar taxes to us. Central Bucks East was 14th in the state. So 200 points difference. And we're worrying about a policy around transgender athletes in our sports. So I hope tonight when you talk about it, you discuss how many cases there were where there were male athletes transitioning to female that are being left out of this. How many male student athletes want to play women's sports here? And then I'm kind of disappointed. I am disappointed. You didn't take much time with this policy. You just copied and pasted, and you left a glaring hole. And I'm gonna bring up Janelle's example. It's great that junior high has boys baseball now. But the way the policy is written, which shows that you really didn't look at every angle of this, if there is a female athlete that does start to transition middle school or high school and is taking hormones for that transition and is now bigger and stronger than some of the male athletes and they beat them out for a spot, this policy does not protect the male athletes. Something none of you looked at. So please, let's talk about that tonight. Let's talk about how many athletes really do want to be on it, unless is the entire men's football offensive line wanting to play basketball this year? I don't know. I'd like to know the number of how many athletes wanted to transition and play in the women's sports field. Thanks.
Ben Bridgewater and then April Fools.
Ben Bridgewater, Percy Borough. I just want to express my approval of the curriculum improvement being considered tonight. And same thing with the sports policy for the first read. Multiple speakers have already come up and said the same thing, so I'm not going to waste everybody's time. So instead, I'll go with this. With the curriculum improvement as a whole, if you read an article called "Pennsylvania School District Requires Social Studies Classes to Incorporate Right-Wing Propaganda," now I know we're talking about English. The attacks on the curriculum improvement are greatly over-exaggerated. And let me explain real quickly. In this article, now of course it makes it sound more scary, the words, the way they present it, but in reality what the article talks about is, it gives a few examples of why it's right-wing propaganda. America's not the only nation that had slavery. Some of the founding fathers knew that slavery was not moral, even though they owned slaves. America gave the women the right to vote, making America a more inclusive country. The founding fathers truly meant it when they said that all men are created equal, and slavery was not the only issue present at the time of the Civil War. There were other issues as well, but slavery was the biggest. Why I bring this up is this is not right-wing extremism. If right-wing extremism could be a lot worse than that, this is neutrality. It's not. So the curriculum improvement is greatly over-exaggerated. The attacks on it, it's ridiculous. I just don't see the extremism anywhere. That's all.
Thank you. April Foltz, and then Jim York.
April Foltz, West Rock Hill Township. I don't have a political ad tonight. My comments are related to the athletic policy, and I have several questions about the policy language. So the purpose states that combining sexes for competition purposes would have a chilling effect on female participation. So the word chilling here is both subjective and inflammatory. There are a myriad of other words you could choose to make the same point, so it leads me to believe it's included for dramatic effect and therefore doesn't have a place in a policy. It also suggests that sports that are currently co-ed, like middle school soccer, are inappropriate or dangerous. In the same section, the policy intent is stated as promoting participation by the historically underrepresented sex in a fair and competitive environment. And while that sounds like support for female athletes, as a woman, I'll tell you it's hard not to see it as a little bit patronizing. Why not just state that you want fair and competitive athletics for all students? It should be the goal. Under definitions, the confidentiality statement regarding documentation of gender identity was removed and is not reintroduced in the policy. This is an important element that should be explicitly stated somewhere in the policy. Under guidelines, there's a statement that sports shall not be segregated on the basis of, quote, irrelevant classifications, which in the policy says includes gender identity. So I'm unclear how this statement correlates to disallowing participation on the basis of biological sex versus gender identity. It just seems like the language is contradictory. Under accommodations, a female is permitted to play on a male team under certain circumstances, while there is no allowance for males to participate in a female team. So what does this mean for a boy who might want to play field hockey, a sport that has only a female team? I've seen multiple boy field hockey players in my day. If we allowed a girl to play football, why not a boy field hockey? Overall, I'm just having trouble understanding the principles behind the policy language, and I worry that the board is also not clear or aligned on those guiding principles. It would be really great to hear discussion on that tonight. In addition to the policy language, I have some general questions I hope you'll address. First, the policy seems to rely on legal precedent of Title IX, but taking a position now in the absence of federal or state guidance in that detail seems to open up the district to yet another costly lawsuit. With so many other real and pressing issues for the district in both academic standings and staffing, why is this policy the priority and why right now? Second, I've asked this before, have you solicited input from the athletic director and from both our men's and women's coaches? They're the ones who will be left to answer questions and translate the policy language long after you've celebrated your victory in passing it. What are their concerns and questions about practical application? My concern is that, like so many other policies, this one will be approved quickly, but you haven't really thought through the next steps. It's in everyone's best interest, students, parents, coaches, and taxpayers, that you collect more stakeholder feedback, share it with the board and the community before you vote. Thank you for your time.
Jim York.
All right, thanks. All right, I'm going to be quick. Jim York, East Rock Hill Township. Wanted to thank the board tonight for preparing and bringing to the meeting here tonight a strong, sound policy on girls' sports and the restrictions there too. We've heard several times tonight that this is not an issue and this isn't something that needs to be dealt with right now. And but what we haven't heard is what the lack of this policy is doing and has done in other areas for girls and girls who participate in sports and for girls who find safety and space and they excel at their sports. And now just recently with some of these athletes who've been subjected to this kind of mixing of genders, or I'm sorry, mixing of biological sexes, and what that's done to them and what it's done to their career and how the institutions have tried to silence them. So I'm thankful that we don't have this issue, and I'm even more thankful that we won't have this issue in the future at Pennridge. Thank you very much.
Susan Niles Valmont. Susan Niles Valmont. Ms. Valmont apparently is not here. Everyone else is signed up for the second session, Mr. President.
Thank you. Moving on to the President's report. A message to our students. Already 1 month into the new school year. Wow, that went quick. I hope everyone is already settled in and ready for a great new year and keeping focus on the successes you all have this year. Stay the course, even when the water gets rough and tests your merit. Remember, you can do anything that you set your mind and your heart to. Always stay true to yourself and your beliefs. I would like to wish every student many months of success in their dedication to their coursework, sporting events, musical performances, art shows, and any other team and individualized opportunities that you have before you this year. Remember, set your goals high and reach for the stars. A message to all our teachers. Thank you for the hard work you do every day. Thank you for your tireless efforts to make sure all their students are staying on task, keeping them focused on the coursework that they are actively working on. Thank you for being an awesome Pennridge School District teacher. A message to all our sports staff. Thank you for your tireless work during the school days, through the many hours after school, during the weekend school events, and our late evenings after everyone has already gone home. No matter your position, your work is greatly appreciated and your dedication does not go unrecognized. A message to our administrative staff. Thank you for your countless hours you are working to make sure our district runs like a well-oiled machine. The numerous evenings at the meetings, showcasing students, sharing in their successes, providing the necessary support systems for our school district to be as great as it is, does not go unrecognized. Thank you for being part of the Pennridge team. Wishing everyone many successes, good health, and much happiness this school year. At this time, I'd like to recognize two of my fellow board members on behalf of the Pennsylvania School Board Association. Ms. Janice Clemens and Ms. Cullen, would you join me down front as I read a statement directly from PSBA? I am here tonight on behalf of the Pennsylvania School Board Association to honor two school board directors for their years of dedication to the Pennridge School District. School board service has been crucial for our nation's legacy and its commitment to public education. As the first school boards association in the United States, PSBA has a rich history with more than 125 years of service. The commensurate school board directors are described as ethical, principled individuals with a deep desire to serve. They believe in the values of public schools and local control of public education for the benefit of our students. Today, school districts are expected to offer more services along with world-class instruction with limited resources. These expectations provide a tremendous challenge for our school directors, unpaid volunteers who dedicate their time to the school board and communities for their service. For more than 40 years, PSBA has been acknowledging the contributions of dedicated local school board directors with long-term service. The honor roll, which is what these plaques are, is the association's way of thanking those individuals who exemplify leadership by giving unselfishly of their time and talents for the betterment of the public schools, serving students across the Commonwealth. I'm very pleased to recognize Ms. Banks-Clemens and Ms. Cullen for their being part of this rich history. Thank you both for your service. Mr. Thomas. Dr. Robertchick, can you come down? It's much easier to speak up here than it is down there. Let's see, that is all I have. And moving on to the superintendent's report.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Rice. We are off and running and there are already tons of events happening in all of our buildings, but we asked all of our schools to send us anything they want us to share with you tonight. And don't worry, we'll be sharing more great things throughout the months ahead for all of our schools as part of the year 2 of the Share Your PSD Great initiative. As for the elementary schools, we want to highlight Sellersville Elementary that has been filled with many activities. They hosted their annual book bash and family picnic with over 140 families attending. Families were able to purchase discounted books and enjoy a treat from the Kona Ice Truck. The staff raised $500 for their PTU. Sellersville also celebrated 5th grade leadership. 5th graders applied for various leadership roles in the school. Some of those roles include hallway safeties, peer tutors, library helpers, and much, much more. This is a special opportunity that only 5th graders can participate in. The Sellersville PTU also sponsored a foam party. Students were able to enjoy a beautiful day outside in the foam, and look at the smiles on the students. They had a lot of fun that day. Also, the Bucks County IU Mobile Fab Lab visited Silo last week, and as you can see, our students had a great time designing and creating. As for our secondary, we want to address the National Merit Scholarship commendations. Pennridge High School is once again proud to announce that we are celebrating 5 students for recognition by the National Merit Scholarship Program. Riley Cullen, Rudra Patel, and Hudson Poe are being commended by the National Merit Scholarship for being in the top 3% of all test takers nationwide. Additionally, we have 2 semifinalists, Benjamin Swartley and Liam Brennan, who now go into the running for the National Merit Scholarship itself. Semifinalists are ranked by being in the top 1 to 2% of all test takers nationwide. According to our College and Career Office, this is the 2nd year in a row that Pennridge High School has recognized 5 students. And before last year, we would have to go back to 2012 to find that many. This is also the first time in nearly 15 years that we have 2 semifinalists. So several of the students and their families are joining us tonight, and we'd like you to come down to the front when your name is called and be recognized. And Mr. Rice, we ask that you would come down so we can get pictures with the students. So our 2024 commended students, Riley Cullen. All right, our second 2024 commended student, Hudson Poe. And our third student for a commended student, I don't believe is here tonight, but I'd like to recognize Rudra Patel. And as for our two semifinalists, Liam Brennan. And our final semifinalist, Benjamin Swartley.
How do you want to do this, Mr. Thomas? The whole group, and then
I'm the shortest.
like families down? Families, come on down. I'll take a picture. It's family. All right, here we go. Everybody, Riley, don't cover up your down. Okay, here we go, guys. Ready? 1, 2, 3. We got it. Great job, everybody.
Congratulations to our students. At this time, Mr. Rice, I'd like to turn it over to you and our student report.
Moving on to the student report. All right.
Okay. Well, with the start of the new school year, as our president said, we have a couple exciting things that have happened or are currently in the process of happening. This past Friday, we had our annual Gold Out game, which helped Mini-Thon raise money for childhood cancer. And then upcoming on October 6th, we have our annual Pink Out game, which helps raise money for breast cancer and those fighting breast cancer. And also, we have many of our clubs starting out again this year, with today being our club fair for the freshman class. They got to see all of our exciting clubs for this year and what Pennridge has to offer for extracurriculars and all of the intellectual, artistic, and many other clubs that we have to offer here. And then finally, we are also in the works of planning our homecoming with the parade, which will include many of our clubs here at Pennridge being scheduled for Friday, October 13th, and the annual dance being scheduled for Saturday, October 14th. So we're really looking forward to those, and yeah, that's it. Very
Thank you.
exciting.
Thank you, Isabella. All right, moving on to committee reports. We're going to start with negotiations. And before we move to the negotiations for the motion, I'm just going to read a joint statement between the PEA and the Pennridge School District. The Pennridge School District and the Pennridge Education Association are pleased to confirm the approval and ratification of a new 5-year collective bargaining agreement. Under the agreement, salaries for teachers and professionals will increase by an average of 3.48% per year and will include step movement in each year. Starting salaries will increase substantially to $51,000 in the first year of the contract, reaching $56,500 in the 5th year. These increases will allow the district to remain competitive to recruit and retain the highest caliber teachers for the Pennridge community. The district and the association each appreciate the hard work of their representatives and all those involved in successfully completing negotiations for this agreement. As a chair, I would like to personally thank our team members, Ms. Dennis Clemens, Mr. Bob Cormack, as well as our Eckerd Siemens attorneys, Mr. John Nadler and Mr. Ryan Cassidy. At this time, I'm going to make a motion to approve the settlement agreement between the Pennridge Education Association, PEA, and the Pennridge Board of School Directors effective July 1, 2023 through June 30th, 2028. Could I get a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. All right, moving on to the consent calendar. Here we go. I'm going to make a motion to approve consent calendar items A through I. Could I get a second?
Second.
I got a motion and a second. Comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Committee reports. Moving on to Ms. Blondin.
Okay, before getting to the motions on the agenda, I just wanted to address a few things that came from about the last curriculum committee meeting. There were a few concerns brought forward during the last curriculum committee meeting concerning colleges not accepting dual enrollment credits. There were a few specific colleges that were mentioned. One, UT Austin, that they did not accept dual enrollment credits. I did reach out to admissions at UT Austin, asking if they do accept out-of-state Pennsylvania dual enrollment credits. The admissions office did respond in writing that they do indeed accept out-of-state dual enrollment credit. There was also mention at the committee meeting that West Virginia University required 4 social studies credits, which I reached out again to admissions as well, and they did respond in writing that they require a combination of 4 credits of social studies and fine arts, and one of those credits must be American history. So I just wanted to pass this information along and just stress to our guidance staff, students, and families to follow up with institutions of interest to help tailor what classes students are interested in taking at Pennridge High School. And then on a different note, yesterday Mr. Adams emailed the board his curriculum report. I won't read it out loud to you tonight, however, I will ask that administration attach it to the board agenda for all to review. I would just encourage all to read it, as there have been many disparaging comments made by both board and community members toward Vermillion and Mr. Adams.
Are we going to discuss that now? I was going to wait until old business, but if we're going to talk about those items now, then I would like to talk. I'm glad that you checked with UT Austin, if that's true that they accept it.
I have the emails
That's good.
here,
Okay.
if you
No,
want to see.
I didn't say that I don't believe you. But as far as the credits for social studies, yes, they accept a combination, but there are some schools that would not accept it. And it says, it's very important that parents understand what that says, to be competitive. And in this day and age, our students, to be competitive at these schools, they are going to be looking for certain things. And certainly when you have a strong core credit or core subject transcript, you're going to be more competitive than other places. I also checked on dual enrollment credits and AP credits because there were some disparaging comments made about AP not being accepted at a lot of schools, was the quote. And I found, and I asked to have it attached to the curriculum meeting. There was a study done by, I can't remember the man's name, but he looked at the 150 top colleges and universities in the country, which includes a whole lot of schools that our kids already go to, schools that our kids would aspire to go to. And they found that only 5.88% of those schools, so in other words, 94%, more than 94% of them do accept advanced placement credits. As far as dual enrollment credits, whether schools accept them or not, that's subjective. They can say that they accept them, but it's always subject to them evaluating what the quality of the college was, et cetera, so forth. But for 94%, or for students, they can have an assurance that over 94% of schools are going to accept those AP credits, and they will save you a lot of money and time. And as far as the disparaging comments about Mr. Adams, I mean, I looked at his email. I requested that he would come to our meetings. I've requested before that he would be here at our meetings, either by Zoom or in person. I know he doesn't live in our state, but certainly he should be able to come to our meetings in some fashion to speak about his work. And what he emailed to us, as you will see, because it's going to be attached to the meeting, is about, I counted it, I actually copied it and counted it. It was about 1,600 words of his report, and a lot of that report included his responses to what he called attacks on his work, on himself. He said that it's not true that he's political because he's never worked on a political campaign. He doesn't understand what being political actually means and the rhetoric that he's used at his various presentations and on social media, such as when he retweeted something from Southern Poverty Law Center. And I agree, Southern Poverty Law Center isn't something that, an organization that I look to because they themselves have some concerning beliefs. But he said that when Southern Poverty Law Center is questioning you, you know you're doing the right thing. And what I would say to him is that it wasn't the right thing to have one board member go out unsolicited and negotiate a contract without any other board members knowing. It wasn't the right thing to approve that contract before any of us got to vet consultants, before we got to consider what their qualifications were, before we got to consider other consultants. And you can make your sideways comments and joke over there, Jordan, but the fact remains that you did not follow anything even closely resembling a proper procedure to hire this man. And the school law requires that anything that's over $10,000 that we go through a bid process. So we asked about that and we were told, well, professional services don't require that we go through a bid process. But it is the practice here in Pennridge with our solicitor. We did a bid process, an interview process to hire our solicitor. We did an interview process and very heavy vetting to hire our engineering firm. And to date, we've spent almost $26,000 on his consultant that no one got to vet. No one got to hear his qualifications before we were forced to hire him. 5 people decided, after what vetting, none of us know because there was never any discussion. So this whole victim persona that he's projecting, like he's a victim of some political crusade against him, is completely false. What people are upset about are legitimate things. The quality of his work, the fact that we had no choice in picking him, the fact that parents cannot opt out the way that we've allowed people to opt out of other things. And, all of a sudden now, whereas we've never had requirements before for people to give a good reason for opting out of something, now we want to have some big religious proof that they should be able to opt out of this curriculum. So, you can go ahead and read his email if you can get through it.
It's a report.
Well, it's a report,
You're
but
confusing the
no,
two.
I'm not. It's an email that has his report. His report should be delivered not with his political commentary or his editorialization about, what people have said. There was another thing that he said that, he said that he's been so communicative, that he has been so eager and so forthcoming with all board members, which, I did respond to him and pointed out to him that there have been many times where he has been the exact opposite of that. There is, in writing, both in text that we had and in emails, where we board members asked to be able to attend the meetings where he would be present and discussing his work and doing, you guys were going to be discussing the curriculum. We were denied access to those meetings. And you can't say that it was a planning meeting and therefore we couldn't be there, or your definitions that you try and spin for to justify why we weren't allowed to attend those meetings. It's a big joke. We should have either been able to attend that meeting, and we didn't ask for all 9 board members to be there, or even a majority of board members to be there. We could have had 1 or 2 board members there that were members of the curriculum committee and who asked to be there. We were denied access to those meetings. And then on top of that, we were denied the right to see what he had talked about. And in his email response to us, when we asked him for the notes to his meetings, to know what he discussed, he sarcastically responded, well, I didn't realize that was part of my contract to have to tell board members what I discussed in my meetings. So for this man to be saying that he's so forthcoming, that he's so communicative, and he's so professional, and he's not at all political, when he is every bit political and not at all communicative, and his work is of low quality, I just think it's so insulting to this community that he issues these treatises, you know, and doesn't expect that he has to be here to directly answer questions. And I think the reason why he won't be here to answer questions is because when he was here in June, he couldn't answer the questions very well. He admitted himself that he didn't have the certifications to do what 5 of you hired him to do. And by the way, when you hired him, you were also not truthful about that. You told us that he wasn't going to be writing curriculum. You guys swore up and down that he wouldn't be writing curriculum. And then we came to find out that he actually did write curriculum. So there hasn't been any honesty, no integrity, no transparency in this entire process. So to just try to gloss over it is ridiculous, and we should be voting to end his contract. Again, I'm going to ask to end it. I don't even know how it's a legal contract because we're almost 3 times the amount that you should be getting bid processes for, or doing a bid process for, that we've paid him, and it wasn't truthful. The circumstances that you hired him, you said that you weren't going to have him writing curriculum, and he did. It keeps changing, and you know, I just think it's horrible. It's horrible, and it's horrible what you foisted upon our kids with that curriculum that's missing a century of instruction. Oh, he talked about that in his email too. He said it's not missing a century. Well, it actually is. It is, no,
Yes,
it
thank you
is.
all for
It's
clarity.
missing a century. He said, well, it's supposed to be just a civics course. No, we are supposed to be also learning that history, and you've left the hole, you created a hole, and then you tried to say afterwards, well, we're going to make something that will cover that history that the kids are going to be missing in 9th grade. That's not good enough. That's doing things in the exact wrong order. So please don't make pretend like Mr. Adams is just some victim of, you know, political attacks. That's not what's going on. The people that have complained about him, complained about his work, complained about the process, have been from a wide variety of political perspectives, not just one.
You know, every meeting, it's like a debate of how much do I engage when I'm just gonna keep hearing a back and forth for, and always,
facts don't
always
change with what
needing
you
someone
did.
to constantly have the last word, and also erring on the side of making sure the public has the facts, because if we say nothing and leave all these things out there, people watching from home don't get to have factual information. There's so many things that I'm not gonna, I couldn't possibly take enough of everybody's time to address all of the mistruths that were just shared, but I will do my best on some things that I think are important for the public to know. Number one, you're talking about an email, Mrs. Blomgren was talking about a report, but on that note, Mrs. Blomgren, I would also ask that you take you know, just the main points that were made in that email, and also attach that to board docs, because I think it would be helpful for the community to have those points. I think that what he was doing is addressing the comments and concerns that were raised by community members and board members, rather than charging us to sit through our board meetings and comments that last until 3 o'clock in the morning, so that, you know, he can succinctly address those concerns that apply to Vermillion without coming and sitting here. But if you want to, you know, rack up taxpayer dollars by paying him $125 an hour to sit here and listen to your comments, you know, then that's fine. Regarding the 100 years of history, first of all, the Vermillion contract, we keep going over this. Tonight, on the finance agenda, we are approving a contract that was not in committee because of timing. This is what happens. There are things that need to be done in a timely fashion, and if they come up after a committee meeting, they go directly on the agenda. I didn't hear anyone express any concerns about that because it's a normal thing. We also had our curriculum chair
was trying to provide support to the administration. The whole board had agreed to bring in Hillsdale curriculum in a public curriculum committee meeting. It is extensive, and our administration did not have any experience going through all of that curriculum. It was a huge task for everybody to take on. So by bringing in Jordan Adams, it helped lessen the amount of time they needed to spend kind of reinventing the wheel, trying to go through everything, because despite the comments, it's so thorough and there's so much detailed, inclusive plans, lessons, resources that it would take the administration forever to go through it. So this was to provide that support. Mrs. Blomgren was trying to help. She was trying to help in a timely fashion so that the curriculum could get done quickly. She was calling every board member to say, hey, I'm going to make this suggestion.
Yes.
I want to add this to the agenda. She got to board member number 7. Yes, she called 7 board members, not 5. And by the time she got to board member number 7, Dr. Bolton had already sent out an email highlighting that this was going to be on the agenda. So at that point, it became moot to be contacting the other 2. Regarding the 100 years of history, we had a curriculum committee meeting where Dr. Scheid put up a whole presentation of exactly what was going to happen. There was going to be a civics, economics, and government course for 9th grade, which is consistent with top-ranking schools who that we don't have that course, and we were not covering everything that we needed to be covering in required courses for those content areas. And the plan was that it would be covered in 8th and 10th grade. And yes, there's also comments about, well, our kids are taking the civics test in 8th grade. Well, that's because we're kind of trying to force that content to teach to the test. Now we won't have to, and that test can be taken in 9th grade. That's again more time where that extra 50 years can move into 8th grade and 50 years into 10th grade. And it's consistent with what the other districts are doing. They're not doing all of those years just focusing on history. It also strengthened our social studies curriculum in elementary school. We were spending a year talking about communities. I think communities are important, but are they important enough to talk about in social studies for a year? I don't think so. We had a year that we were talking about Native Americans, which was inconsistent with even the state standards. And when asked, well, why do we do that? The answer was, that's what Pennridge has always done, so that's what we continue to do. The administration was actively working on that. This was consistent with what they were trying to accomplish. The report, the progress report, I've gotten a number of emails from people. Please, it's long, okay, but it's detailed and it's so important. When that progress report gets attached on board docs, please read the entire report, because it really is important. It really does highlight exactly the concerns about fixing our curriculum. Everybody comes up here and keeps complaining about our scores, and then they complain that we're fixing the curriculum. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, our scores are directly in line with the curriculum that the kids are being taught, and the level of that curriculum and the rigor of that curriculum. So, again, I ask that Mrs. Blomgren, you pull out those points and attach that in board docs as well. Maybe send that over to Mrs. Chenoweth to attach. There were not. I'll stop there.
Okay, so it's completely and entirely false to say that what I said was not true about us not being allowed to attend that meeting and what he said in response when we asked for the information. Stop not telling the truth. If you don't want me to say the word lie, I won't say the word lie. The other schools that you mentioned, you have no idea because you didn't look, and nobody ever does. You guys do things backwards. You changed the 9th grade curriculum without putting the other things in place that those other schools may have. You didn't investigate that. You did not vet this man in any way, shape, or form. We did not get to talk about him. And you're talking about a contract. I have no idea which one you're talking about that got added. But whatever contract you're talking about, fine. Don't vote for it. Say that you don't want to support it. This is something that I asked questions about it. This is something that you are giving somebody, and again, under false pretenses. You did not say that this is what this person was going to be doing. You made it seem like he was only going to be giving suggestions for social studies. It morphed into him being given free rein over our entire curriculum. And if you don't think that it warrants a public discussion and a full vetting and choices being made of different consultants to have someone work on our entire curriculum, I just don't even know what to say to you. I mean, Bob, chair of the facilities committee, would we ever hire an engineering firm without vetting multiple engineering firms, without interviewing multiple firms? No, we wouldn't, because we haven't. We have never done that. We wouldn't even hire a solicitor before we interviewed multiple law firms and had every board member involved in that decision. And to say, oh, I talked to 7 people and then I stopped and blamed Dr. Bolton. I think, first of all, blaming Dr. Bolton for the process stopping is ridiculous. We all saw Dr. Bolton's email. We all know what Dr. Bolton thought about this contract. We all know the misgivings that he had, how upset he was, and how detrimental he thought it would be for us to go through and pass it. And so tonight, to blame him for you not doing your homework and not going through this properly and throwing this on an agenda with nearly 24 hours notice is just, I mean, it's completely outrageous. You do everything backwards. You make these approvals, you rush it through, as people have talked about in public comment, and then you try to go back and plug in hysterically the, where you need to make these changes. We never agreed to make Hillsdale our entire curriculum. Never. It was said that maybe we could use that as a resource. You have now based everything on this curriculum. Also, you mentioned elementary social studies. You guys have said many times, oh, elementary social studies was so bad, and we didn't do anything to it for 2 years. And what did you do when you approved this 9th grade curriculum in August to start, well, actually after school started, you approved it, but you delayed elementary social studies. On the one hand, you were saying that elementary social studies was in such dire need of correction that we needed to do this right away, but you delayed elementary social studies, which was the bigger problem, as you stated, but you rushed through the 9th grade social studies that really didn't have anything wrong with it. So you don't even.
9th grade was ready. Dr.
Well,
Schein
no,
said
9th grade is
was
not.
ready,
No.
and social.
Well,
the elementary
actually, and
teachers
that's
said they
another
weren't.
point that, again, with the textbook approval, there are new resources, new texts in the 9th grade curriculum. The 9th grade curriculum that does not have superintendent recommendation. Not administrative recommendation. The school law says where a school district has a superintendent, the superintendent does not recommend, the school board must approve by a 2/3 vote. That means 6 votes, you had 5 votes, and you can't tell me that you're substituting the administration for the superintendent, because when I asked to have an interim superintendent appointed, I was told that we didn't need to do that, that it wasn't required that we have it because Dr. Bolton is still our superintendent. And our superintendent that we just hired does not start until November 1st. So this does not have superintendent recommendation, therefore it should have a 2/3 vote. And I know that our solicitor gave an answer about that, but sometimes maybe you need a second opinion on things, because the school law is pretty clear in saying that it needs to be the superintendent. It doesn't even, and some things say superintendent or his designee. And that doesn't say that in that part of the school law. It clearly says superintendent, and where you don't have that superintendent recommendation, you have to have a 2/3 vote. It could not be any clearer.
Can we move on?
Hold on,
Yeah,
we're going to move on.
Excuse me.
because
Please be in order. Everyone, please be in order.
One
The
just-
president has the floor.
One just thing, I was accused of
Ms.
not having.
Ms. Banis-Clemens, the president has the
I'd
floor.
like Ms. Blomgren to move on to 7B so we can actually.
Mr.
make
Rice,
the
I was accused of having not done my homework on something that I did do my homework on, which is what those other schools are doing. And many of the other schools that have the four requirements and have the extra history do have a 4th course that's called Social Justice or African American History. If you want to add one of those, please let me know.
No, it's not
as
about
far-
adding
excuse
it.
me.
It's about what they
The
have
meeting-
beforehand, before
Two
what
more
you cut
things,
out.
and then
The agenda, it was an agenda-setting meeting which the chair has, and it is not open to everyone, otherwise you'd be having the curriculum committee meeting
Why
twice.
would you object to
And
members being
last-
present? No, it was
We had
not,
one
wait,
person speaking
wait,
at a
no,
time,
because
please.
at the last
We
meeting
had
you
one
changed
person
it.
speaking
No,
at a time,
because
please.
at the last meeting,
Ms. Clemens,
you
you-
guys said it was not an agenda-setting
Mellon.
meeting.
It
You
was-
said that, no, you said it was
it was an
a planning,
agenda-setting
no,
meeting.
you
No.
said, nope, nope.
It was an
You can
agenda-setting
keep
meeting.
trying to
Okay,
rewrite
I'm
the
not
history.
gonna, I'm not gonna go back and forth. The last thing, you said that I blamed Dr. Bolton for our curriculum issues. You're wrong. I blame you. You were the curriculum chair for 5.5 years.
No,
You
you
didn't do
blamed
your
Dr.
job.
Bolton
And
for
Jordan
not
Blonde
telling
Hernandez.
board members, no,
So-
you blamed Dr. Bolton for you not having told board members, or even the administration for that matter. The administration didn't even know that this contract was going on to the agenda. Those are the facts, Megan, and you can sit there and you can try to rewrite and reword and come up with new things like writing curriculum isn't the same as, or reviewing curriculum means writing curriculum.
I'm gonna make a motion to
But the fact remains that you guys did
item
not do
number
this the proper way.
7B on the agenda. I'll make a motion to approve middle school RELA courses.
Second.
Thank you. Got a motion and a second on the
We
floor.
have questions and comments?
8B, just a clarification.
Which is
7B.
7B.
Oh, that's right.
What are we,
It's 8B, right?
No,
So
7B.
7B is where we're at on the agenda.
Look, mine.
7B?
Oh, I thought you said the.
7B
7B.
is where we're at on the agenda. Well, that's where we're at.
Look.
You guys added the student liaison report that
There's, correct. So there's a motion.
Mine
Thank you.
doesn't have the same thing.
There's a motion and a second. Mr. Wurs has asked for comments and questions.
but we're on 7B, the.
7B,
RELA.
yes, that's correct.
Okay, so I won't rehash any of that stuff, but I'm voting against the curriculum for the following reasons. An unknown part of this is connected to Jordan Adams. No one was able to tell me what parts were added or changed by Mr. Adams. I asked multiple times. Nobody in the faculty or administration, as far as I know, supports this addition to our curriculum. They were forced into it. I believe the feedback I did get is limited by the fact that the board threatened to eliminate positions at our school if they did not work with Mr. Adams. You all remember that. Believe it or not, that's still tabled, so that threat is still there. There's no way I would ever vote for anything that this man has participated in. It's time to give the curriculum back to our teachers, our administrators, and do it like we've always done it. And we have done it well in the past, and we can do it again. But until anybody can tell me what this guy is adding to it, I can't vote for any of it.
Just a point of order, Mr. President, I apologize to Ms. Vance Clemens. It actually, I have a printed version that says 7B, it's actually 8B. She's correct about that, but it's the same proposal, so that everyone knows. Ms. Chenoweth, we're going to need a roll call vote when we get there.
That was correct, Josh. We did that student liaison report, so that was the change that made it, dropped it from 7 to 8.
I actually found Mrs. Raber's, the way that she presented it and answered the questions, I thought that she has a handle on this, and I felt like she had support for it. So if I didn't have that, then I would not be in favor of this. But giving deference to her, I felt that she had a level of comfort with what was done and how she indicated it came about. I also think that there's a big difference, and I think we're going to get clarification on this, between how the social studies uses the term required and how required it is utilized and student choice and teacher choice as well in the RELA component. So I like the way that it's utilized in the RELA component. It's more clear in that regard, and because Ms. Raber support for it, I'm supportive of it as well.
My concern isn't with Mrs. Raber's. She did answer the questions, but Ron is correct that they still have that hanging over their head, the specter of being, terminated if they don't go along. And also, really, the bigger thing for me is this opt-out issue. We have parents who have asked to opt out. We all talk about how parents should have the ultimate choice in what their children learn, how they're educated, and I'm going to hold to that. I don't think that we can say on the one hand that we're going to allow an opt-out for one issue with no supporting documentation or any kind of justification being offered, but then with something like this where it comes to the student's education, that we're not going to allow parents to opt out. and this was something that I brought up before this curriculum was ever approved, was that when you have people wanting to opt out of something like this, where they say anything that Vermillion was involved with developing or writing, or whatever word we're using today, whatever he was involved with, that is not as simple as opting out from a particular book, a text, a movie, whatever reading assignment. This is interwoven throughout all of the curriculum, and parents, yes, should have the right to opt out of it based on whatever their beliefs are, and we need to create a different course, which we haven't had the time to do, so I can't support it, and it's, no offense to Mrs. Raber.
Ms. Chenoweth, can we have a roll call vote, please? Thank you.
Mrs. Spanish Clemens?
Yes.
Ms. Patisky?
No.
Mrs. Blomgren?
Yes.
Mrs. Chaikin?
Yes.
Mr. Cormack?
Yes.
Mrs. Cullen?
No.
Mr. Russell?
Yes.
Mr. Rice?
Yes.
Mr. Wers?
No.
Thank you, Ms. Chenoweth. Ms. Blomgren, if you could move to
Okay.
8C, please.
Okay. Motion to approve targeted support improvement plan for Central Middle School.
Second that. There's a motion and a second. Comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Sorry.
There is no curriculum committee meeting scheduled for October because there's nothing to be on the agenda at that time. So we will meet, giggling, but it wasn't suggested by myself. We will meet again in November.
Moving on to facilities. Mr. Coleman, please.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. First, we have approval of prime contract number 1. Motion to award a bid for prime contract number 1, high school, middle school campus paving, phase 3, to Barker & Barker, an amount of $1,584,000. To decline to deduct bid alternate for striping.
I'll second that. There's a motion and a second. Comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
We have a motion to award a bid to prime contract for number 2, wayfinding signage to fast signs in the amount of $76,800.
Second that. There's a motion and a second. Comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
We have a motion to approve obsolete items A through D listed below.
I'll second that motion. Motion has been made and seconded. Comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
The next facilities scheduled meeting is Tuesday, October 10th, 2023.
All right, moving on to finance. Approval of contracts. Motion to approve contracts A through G listed below.
Second.
I got a motion and a second. Comments or questions?
Were there ones that were added according to?
G was added. That is the final one, the Bucks County Intermediate Union Agreement for the interim elementary principal at Diabler Elementary.
And can someone speak to that as to what?
That is Dr. Cole. That is going to be the interim until Ms. Pulley is going to be in place over there. So that is that transition. That is a Bucks County Intermediate Unit Agreement.
And is that typical that we would use the intermediate unit to fill a position?
Yeah, everybody got the email, I think, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and we knew that, we saw the contract that was written by the Bucks County IU, so we were all aware, and this just happened to be an error, I guess, to be added at the last minute. So
Mr. Russell, it's the same contract that the IU uses. It's a standard contract. I've reviewed it a couple 100 times. It's perfectly fine.
Yeah, I was just asking about why we go to the IU to fill that position as opposed to, it's just harder for us individually to fill it as opposed to using them, or what?
It's an interim.
Mr. Cole is actually, Dr. Cole, excuse me, is actually a retired North Middle School principal. So he just worked with the Bucks IU to facilitate that contract. And so it's
Mr. Russell, it's been my experience that when you have a short term between somebody coming in and somebody leaving, that the IU often kind of plugs somebody in. It's not unusual. Just, you know, like Source for Teachers or one of those things. It's a pretty standard thing.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Just waiting for the vetting question for one of the ones that we didn't discuss in committee.
If you have an issue with it, Jordan, please bring it up. When was it put on the contract, or when was it separated out? Which one is it? Would you like to separate it? Please do.
I
How
asked
long is
questions
this
on it.
one
I got
for?
my questions answered.
The intermediate unit
I'm
is
just
for
waiting
what,
for
how
those.
long, like a month?
No, it would go,
Maybe 2 months?
the contract actually runs, if necessary, through the end of the year.
Okay.
If
So we don't have a
necessary,
time
but-
limit on
No,
Jordan
Ms.
Adams,
Pulley
so-
will.
Yeah, we don't have a time
I'm
limit
okay
on
with
Jordan
it.
Adams.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
And actually, Dr. Cole, as opposed to Jordan Adams from Michigan, who nobody ever heard of and had a 4-month-old business when you hired him and didn't allow us to vet him before you gave him control of our entire curriculum. Dr. Cole is a person that I know, a person that was a very successful principal for us at the middle school. He is vetted in the sense that he has a long history of
That's
work
not the one I'm
in
referring
the
to.
Pennridge School District.
That was
Which
also,
one is
that we
it?
didn't also have
Well,
finance.
which one is it?
F was
F.
also added that we didn't discuss in
Judge
committee.
healthcare, okay, well.
But I don't need to separate it. I reached out with questions that I have.
I'll separate it. Can we separate item F, please?
Joan, can you stop wasting the whole community?
No, I'm not wasting time. We're not wasting time. We are not wasting time.
But
You
you're really not
guys
wanting
know-
to separate it for the vetting, you're just doing it for that purpose.
No,
But that's
well,
why,
I mean,
you can't have
clearly have
selective, you can't
it.
have
Pardon me.
selective
Wait,
outrage
okay,
over
so-
something not being
Can we
vetted,
stop?
and
Okay.
it's something that's
The
similar.
motion-
That's, you have
the
to
motion that's
equal.
been
No,
approved.
wait, we're not done with the discussion yet then.
The motion-
Please explain what is judge healthcare, personal care, and teaching assistance as per attached fee schedule? What is it?
There was an
Please
email
explain
sent
it
by
for the-
Mr. Dahlberg.
No, for the public, please explain it. What is it?
Right now, we have 23 opened personal, like one-to-one positions that are open, as well as 3 paraprofessional positions open. So this is on the table so that we could use them to contract out to try to fill some of those one-to-one positions as well as the paraprofessional positions.
So it's the same thing as when we might contract out to, for example, the same way we did with needing extra nurses. We've changed that. We've done different things with substitute teachers. We've changed that. Are these paraprofessionals going to be writing all of our curriculum for all of our students?
Just asking for
on
the
an
same
ongoing
equal,
basis?
the
It
same
is
equal questions they
Jordan.
have. It is
Jordan,
not.
you are not comparing apples to apples. You're purposely trying to say, oh, look, in this emergency situation,
Does anybody?
Dr.
You
or
should know about
Mr.
it.
Adams
Okay,
was
can
not
I-
in
can I have
rewriting our
everybody's attention?
curriculum.
Can we?
Well, no,
can we
because I'm
stop
not
for a minute?
finished.
Do we want
I'm not-
everything?
no, I'm
Do
not
we want
finished.
anything removed from this motion? Because I will adjust the motion if that is what we would like to do. If we do not want to adjust the motion, then we will make the motion as said and seconded.
I guess
A
that
through
we don't
G.
need it to be separated, but
There we
I'm
go.
still
So
going
we
to
have-
make the point
And
that this is not the
All-
same as giving our curriculum over
all
to
those
some
in favor?
unknown person.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Moving on to the approval of timekeeper software. Motion to approve Time Clock Plus, as the new timekeeper software for the school district. Could I get a second?
Second.
I got a motion and a second. Comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, motion to approve the student activity account listed below. It's just one. It is the high school FBLA renew and carry over. Can I get a second, please?
Second.
I got a motion and a second. All the comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next Finance Committee meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, October 10th, 2023. Moving on to personnel, Ms. Chaikin.
Okay, we just have one item on personnel. It's a motion to approve the 2023-24 healthcare premiums listed, which are attached.
I'll second that. Motion has been made and seconded. Comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And we also do not have a date right now for the next personnel meeting.
All right, moving on to policy, Ms. Spanish-Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. First, I want to address some of the questions that were asked in the public comment. One of the questions was why we utilized the words chilling effect. That was actually wording that we pulled from PIAA, so that was actually their wording, not ours. The chilling effect came directly from them. Regarding the gender identity definition, it's still in there, so I wasn't able to follow that one. As far as the field hockey example of a boy playing on a girls' field hockey team, if you look at Section 4C in the PIAA rules, there's 4 different criteria that a boy would have to meet to be able to play on a girls' team. And it even requires that it be even stricter for certain contact sports, which they specifically include field hockey for. If you look at those 4 different bullets and you tie those into Pennridge, it is impossible for anyone to be able to meet those 4 criteria to be able to play on a girls' team, which is why it seems like it's obsolete to put that language on there, because then we're essentially throwing out there that there's a possibility of someone being able to do something that in reality they can't do. For example, they can't displace a girl. All of our teams have cuts. They can't go on a team that has a comparable team for boys, and then there's the competitive advantage. There were 4 different criteria. If you look through all of the criteria, off the top of my head, it's physically not possible, which is why it didn't make sense to include it and give that false hope. Regarding the athletic director and coaches, one of the things that I'm going to suggest as far as a change kind of gives that discretion. And I was also able to follow up with Mr. Barrios about the suggestion as well, so that the administration has the leeway to be able to apply that section of the policy. So there's 3 different, in conversations with our attorney, with board members, and looking through the intent and trying to apply what everybody is looking for, I'm going to make 3 non-substantive changes, or suggest 3 non-substantive changes in my motion before I make the motion. One is, if you open up the policy and look at E1, it just says school. That should say district. So again, not substantive, but changing school to district. Then if you look under authority, there was just a sentence there that was unclear. Again, doesn't change the context of the sentence, but makes the sentence grammatically accurate. If you look, it said it is precisely, those words would be removed, and it would say, because schools have a significant interest in providing increased competitive opportunities to females, then taking out the word that. Implementing regulations provide, taking out that. Schools the ability to, taking out may, operate and sponsor separate teams for members of each sex. Again, before it just didn't make sense, and so I worked with Mrs. Summers to just make those complete sentences and clear. So now, I'll reread. It just says, because schools have a significant interest in providing increased competitive opportunities to females, implementing regulations provide schools the ability to operate and sponsor separate teams for members of each sex. And the last suggestion I'm going to make is that we take out the very last sentence in the policy, which essentially, and I'll read it. Similarly, athletes and/or teams who choose not to compete against the opposite sex shall have that choice respected by Pennridge coaches and staff without negative repercussions, with the exception of accommodations noted in section E number 1 of this policy. The idea is to remove that section and allow that to be handled based on administrative regulations, erring on the side of not penalizing someone for this, but not trying to create policy that tries to spell out going down every rabbit hole and instead leaves it up to the administration to take it situation by situation to apply that. So those are my 3 suggestions. So I'm going to make a motion to approve this policy with those 3 changes.
Ms. Vance Clemens, this motion, which is approved and seconded, is the first reading only, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
So at the last meeting, we discussed adding the PAA. When did that change and why weren't we notified of that?
I'm sorry, what specifically,
We-
what we
brought-
did was we took the language and put it in without referring back to PIAA because the language.
But you just said that you couldn't put it in because then it would prohibit them from playing, the last thing you said. You didn't put that
Oh,
language
I'm
in.
sorry. Right, you're talking about 4C, right, and adding that specific language in. In looking through it and talking through it, it didn't make sense to add the language because it's impossible for it to be applied. So it's just making it, it's more like just not adding all of these things that you can't actually do, if that makes sense.
But who's using that as a guideline? If it's out there, this is for the state, right?
Well, for example, if you're in a smaller district that doesn't have certain sports that are as there are some smaller districts that may have an opportunity where that would work, but it wouldn't work in Pennridge. If I can pull up section 4C and walk through it if you want, but there just isn't a scenario where it would work there.
We discussed that, so I just wanted to get caught up.
Yeah, the one thing I thought by having it in there, it would anchor it to something that lends, that we're just not making this policy up, but we're tying it in. But because it says may in both, I think it does tend to confuse things a little bit. If it said, you're required to, then maybe we had to work with that. But I think because it says may in the PIAA, it really gives you discretion as to how you want to try to explain that. And I do think, reiterate for the public's benefit, that whole section in the very beginning of the purpose is pretty much taken identically from the section 4 of PIAA's policy.
So since we are having a thorough discussion on this, I just want to make sure the public has the details. So under 4C, the 4 criteria are that the overall boys athletic program at the student school provides fewer opportunities for boys to participate than girls. That's not the case here. There aren't fewer opportunities for boys than girls. So that can't be met. Number 2, the boy would not displace any girl from the team's roster. Again, we have cuts. The boy would likely not, due to his physical size, athletic ability, and/or other characteristics, pose an increased risk of harm to opponents beyond that which would be posed by an average-sized and skilled participating girl. And 4, the boy would not provide his team with a significant competitive advantage. As applicable herein, this means that the boy's participation would likely cause the team to be noticeably more competitive than it would be without the boy's participation on the team. Considering whether to permit participation with regard to factors 3 and 4 above, the principal shall be guided by the following. Where there is a question as to the risk posed to opponents or to a possible significant competitive advantage to the principal's team, such questions should be resolved in favor of the health and safety of opponents and in favor of preventing significant competitive advantage. If you look at what sports we offer, and think through, okay, what is a sport that the girls have that the boys don't have that you would want them to be able to have? Like, in other words, we both have volleyball, they both have basketball. What sports do girls have? Because if there's a boys team, then there isn't an option for it. The only one that I can think of that would, that would even be something they'd be looking to go on to join would be cheerleading. And I looked into that, and that's actually co-ed, so they can anyway. So, again, we cover all of those things here. So that's why it really makes it obsolete, because the standard for a boy playing on a girl's team is different than the standard for a girl playing on a boy's team. If that makes sense.
It's still, I'm okay with what we're doing, but it still doesn't prevent another school from using that and getting an advantage against our school. And we're taking care of ourselves, but if everybody adopted the same standard from the PIAA, then we would all be on level playing field.
Well, so those other schools would at the minimum have to follow PIAA standards. So in other words, if you could show that they're violating one of those 4 criteria.
But those are all judgments made by the school.
Well, right, I mean, I guess if you had a situation where, say, you have a girls' field hockey team that's playing against a different school district who has a boy on the team, and the boy is so competitive and good that it's you know, in the coach's judgment, dangerous, you know, I would think that would be a situation where there would become some kind of an argument. I just think, again, I think this becomes like going down a rabbit hole of situations, you know what I mean?
But with the taking out that last sentence, I think that's actually one of the most important parts of the policy in my mind, because in the case of the collegiate swimmers, they were, what's the word that we use here? Yeah, the negative repercussions. I mean, they did have negative repercussions against them. They were told not to speak up, and I don't know if we should take that out and leave it up to an AR or leave it up to, you know, the principal at the time, because then you're allowing for there to be something different where a student could be punished possibly, and then we can, you know, it would turn to this and they would say, well, it's not in the policy. That was an important part of the policy to me, to have it reflect that we're not going to punish students regardless of, sorry, my computer's trying to restart itself. Anyway, I just think that's an important part that I don't want to leave to question, that on both sides, both males and females, we need to respect them and allow them to make a choice and have that choice be respected by Pennridge coaches and staff without negative repercussions.
Sounds like, so we have some conversation to do in a second read, since this is a first read.
Well, I know, but on the second read, the way the second reads go, you're not allowed to make any substantive changes. So, you know, if that's going to be considered a substantive change to have it reinserted or whatever, I guess if it's not substantive to take it out, it shouldn't be substantive to put it back in. But I want to be assured of that before we vote on this as a first read.
So I did have that conversation actually with Mrs. Summers and Mr. Miller regarding that exact question, and they did not feel that it would be a substantive change to make that modification of whether or not that's handled in administrative regulations or the policy with regard to a second read. So if there's more conversation on that in the second policy meeting and there's discussion about trying to put it in a different worded version, that wouldn't send it back to first read.
Okay, well, I do want the understanding that if it does, that this would be reverted back to first read for the next meeting. In other words, I don't want to just gloss over it when we get there and say, well, it's just going to be second reading and we'll handle it with an AR. So if we can agree that we're not going to go back on that.
I'm not sure.
Just said.
I'm not
Because
sure
I
I'm
would be
following
okay
you.
with it going to an AR, so you're saying you don't want it to, but I would be fine with that.
I actually don't, that again was one of the most important parts. If we're going to say that we want to protect, and honestly, yes, I mean, let's be honest, it is mostly to protect females, because that's just facts. But, you know, there can be a situation where a male would have some certain feelings, and we'd have to respect that in the same way that we would respect it for a female. For me, it just makes it more concrete and has more authority when it's in the policy itself, as opposed to leaving it to chance, because if you're saying principal, then we have how many building principals? Well, four building principals, an athletic director, and you know, 3 or 4 grade level principals that could be involved in a decision about how to handle a student that has an objection to competing against the opposite sex. And to me, that's a lot of wiggle room, that you have a lot of people then being involved in a decision. I think that you need to have that more ironed out.
Just to be clear, the principal reference, is used in PIAA's wording. Nowhere in our policy does it refer to it being a principal decision. So the discussion was whether or not this could be handled in administrative regulations through the superintendent, and that they would just apply it in a case-by-case basis, erring on the side of no one would be punished, but leaving room to handle things in a case-by-case basis, because not everything is black and white.
Yeah, but see, in this particular situation, when I hear that phrase case-by-case basis, for this, it does give me pause, I have to say, because I don't want there to be, again, like someone could say, well, in this case, we don't think that you should have an objection to competing, and we've made that decision, so therefore, we will be allowed to bench you, or whatever the case may be. So it actually makes me less comfortable when you say case-by-case basis. I would like something that clearly says to Pennridge students, we're going to respect your decision and your feelings, no matter in which direction they go. We're going to respect that, and we have it in our policy, and that's how much we believe in it, that we're not going to do this case by case.
Excuse me, please be in order. Ms. Cullen, I understand your point. The current version that's been motioned and seconded does not have that language in, based on the amendment made by Ms. Vance Clemens, just so we're clear on what we're voting on.
Well, but she's saying that it would be then, when we take that last sentence out, of the very last sentence of the policy, what we're going to do instead, this is the proposal, what we're going to do instead is to have an AR, and the words that I heard were that it would be up to, if it's not going to be the principal, okay, but it's still going to be up to a superintendent on a case-by-case basis. And I don't...
The one issue that I had with that sentence was that, with the exception of accommodations noted in section E, number 1 of this policy, because when we were talking through at the committee level, say if there was if we didn't have the girls wrestling team, and say we competed, our boys wrestling competed against a school that didn't have a girls wrestling team, so the girl wrestled with the boys, okay? And if this says that with the exception of accommodations noted in section E, number 1 above, it made it seem like that boy couldn't choose not to wrestle the girl, even though he felt that he didn't want to, for the opposing school, because that exception above was that it was going to allow the participation because the girls didn't have a team, and so they could do that. And then it just seemed like it would get too cumbersome to identify each scenario where that would be the case. So it seemed like it may be better to leave it on a case-by-case basis. But I understand what you're saying, Ms. Cullen, about you don't want there to be any discriminatory consequences. But then I was thinking, what do we do if somebody objects for, say there's a religious holiday that there's a sport played on, and they choose not to play on that day because of religious holiday? Don't we have some sort of language somewhere that would say, hey, you can't take repercussions based upon someone's beliefs or values or something like that? Is there no policy that exists in that regard?
There's the general policy against non-discrimination, but generally speaking, policies are large guidelines, and you just can't write a policy that covers every possible permutation of what might happen. So that's, to your point, that's one of the concerns about having that language in there is, how do you draft a rule so broad? At some point, the athletic director and the superintendent are going to have to make a decision.
I think the decision should be that they are not penalized in any way.
Well, can you have it so that it just ends with the negative repercussions and just period there? So we're not creating exceptions or things like that? And could we keep that in this read and then discuss it further at the next?
So my concern with just leaving it completely open-ended is you even in our policy under section E number 1, if you don't include that language limiting it, what happens is you open the door to, and again, I'm not saying this would happen, but if we're going down this rabbit hole, you got to go down the rabbit hole, right? Which is a girl in Central Bucks or Abington or wherever, right? Is a really competitive baseball player, and based on our own policy, if a girl is a strong enough baseball player that she can make the boys' team, she's allowed to play on it. Same thing for football. If you leave that completely open-ended, a boys' baseball team can say, I'm not playing that baseball team because they have a girl on the team, or I'm not playing that football team. So despite the fact that the girl beat out a bunch of boys and made the team, and something we would allow in our own district, this policy would allow the team to say, nah, I'm just not gonna play that team. Again, I don't think any of that's going to happen, and that's why I think going down this rabbit hole of things that may happen in a million different scenarios isn't the most effective way to do it, as opposed to leaving it up to the administration. So I'm gonna, respectfully, I would like to leave it the way that I had motioned it, and if it passes, I think that's the best way to do it. But if it doesn't, I'll modify it to fit whatever facilitate the will of the board and what direction you want to go. If again it's second read, or between now and second read, board members have more thoughts about it, comments, questions, and maybe change their position on whether or not that should be in administrative regulations or in here and what that wording is, we can again have that conversation, and again we would facilitate whatever the will is. If the will ends up being a little different than tonight, then that's what direction we'd move forward to the board meeting.
We got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, moving on.
Actually, I wanted to add something. Just it sort of fits under policy. So I don't know if everybody's been following the news lately, but last week I saw in the news that we were being sued as a district. I was kind of blindsided as on this as no one from the leadership bothered to inform us. It's over our library policy, if you're not familiar with this. Last year, after months of discussion, we passed a policy on library books. It was designed so that anyone could challenge a book based on a host of objections. It was designed so that parents would have a say in books in our library. Many complained that this was a book ban, but it did put in place a method where each book could be evaluated on its own merits. It seemed it could be a good compromise on the issue of age appropriateness. Although our board passed this policy, it now appears that someone is working behind the scenes to bypass it. Over the past few months, I've asked repeatedly why some books appeared on our weeding list. If you're not familiar with the weeding list, it's a list of books removed from the library for any number of reasons, including worn books, books signed out infrequently, etc. The latest weeding list conveniently included a number of books that the organization Moms for Liberty suggested be removed from all libraries. Our weeding list did not give a reason for each book's removal, so I asked for more information. After a month or two, I received a list that said all these books were removed because of infrequent use. However, the story in the news now indicates that they were checked out for over a year and then intentionally changed to hide that fact. Obviously, this was not a coincidence, but a deliberate action to remove the books and try to make it seem as if no one was using them. Now, I believe our librarians would not have taken these off the shelves by their own initiative. I also believe Dr. Bolton would never have done this. My question is, who would orchestrate this removal and try to keep the public in the dark? Maybe the lawsuit will bring out this information. It's just another example of complete lack of transparency and a violation of the policy we just passed. We didn't put any of those books through this policy. Some don't think we need to follow the rules. Why am I bringing this up? It's because these antics result in us spending significant money on legal fees. Unfortunately, there seems to be a trend lately, as our legal bills have skyrocketed over the last year. This year alone, we are looking at spending close to $1 million on legal fees for many different cases, many different things. And it's continued to trend for the last 2 months, which I did receive the bills today.
Excuse me. First of all, this is
No,
my.
I'm gonna finish
Hold on a
this.
second. This is my policy. This is my policy report. This is not on the agenda. You are completely crossing a line, going into first of all executive session material, and second of all,
No,
it
it's
is
all in the
excuse
news.
me.
Hold
It is
on.
completely
Hold on.
dishonest.
Hold on.
You are in receipt of the legal advice and the details of the situation, and you know that what you are saying is blatantly false because you have
not
it in
saying it.
writing,
Mr.
and for you to
President,
make
I would like to
accusations
call
that
an
are blatantly
executive
false
session now,
when you
please.
have that information
Please, Ms.
is
Bennett,
dishonest. And
Mr.
a real
Word,
low
can
for
we
you,
stop?
even if you're trying to do this
Can
for
we
politics,
please-
because you know what you're saying is
Can we-
completely false. You have the confidential information
we
to know it's
stop?
false.
Can we
Mr.
stop?
President,
I'm
I would
gonna
like
call
to
an
ask for an executive session
I'm gonna
for
call
litigation
it.
matters right now. Thank you.
Blatantly false.
2 minutes to get back on stage. All right, Mr. Thomas, are you live? Thank you, sir. And we can...
I just wanted to retract my comments there. I did make a mistake and an error, and just withdraw those comments.
Thank you.
That's it. Mr. Wurst, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wurst.
All right, that was the end of the policy committee. Yep, moving on to the IU, correct. Ms. Bennis-Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. One of the things I've highlighted frequently about the intermediate unit is their ability to find needs in the community that need to be met, and then find ways to address those needs without us having to incur any of those costs, and finding other organizations and the government funding to be able to pay for those things. And one of those biggest things has to do with adult programs and services. And they actually had a mini report on this at the last meeting, so I'm going to share a lot of it because I just think it's really a great thing that the intermediate unit has been working on over time. The Bucks County Intermediate Unit historically has provided specialized services to individuals with disabilities through the age of 21, and has recognized many individuals require support in the workplace and community after they leave the school setting. That's always been the responsibility of the intermediate unit, but one of the things they've worked on expanding since then, again, without passing on that cost to districts, was really meeting the needs of these adults after they leave that, after they leave those programs. The Bucks IU was approved as a provider for adult services in 2019, providing services to adults with disabilities in alignment with the Bucks IU vision to expand services and serve the Bucks County community across all ages in the most comprehensive manner. The Bucks IU is approved as a provider for adult services with both the Office of Developmental Programs and the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation. ODP is the state office designated to administer and oversee supports and services to individuals with intellectual disabilities and autism. The Bucks IU is approved with ODP to provide both supported employment services and community participation support services. Supported employment services include career assessment, job finding activities, and on-the-job support. The Bucks IU has served a handful of clients through ODP's supported employment program. Community participation support services assist adults with disabilities to explore meaningful leisure, volunteer, and employment opportunities within their community. The CPS program is very attractive to individuals and is where the Bucks IU has seen the most growth as a provider. The Bucks IU initially began the CPS program with one rotation of 7 clients. Since then, we've expanded to 2 rotations with 12 clients, with a 3rd opening this fall. 2 additional rotations are in the planning process with anticipated opening in January 2024. The Bucks IU has a broader vision to provide additional services through ODP over the next year. While the Bucks IU ODP programs have grown slowly over time, the Bucks IU OVR program has grown rapidly. As an OVR service provider, the Bucks IU currently supported employment and My Work Initiative programs. Individuals who qualify for OVR supported employment are eligible to receive community-based assessments and evaluations, employment training, and employment placement assistance. These services support individuals with disabilities to prepare for, obtain, or maintain employment. When the Bucks IU began providing employment services through OVR, approximately 20 individuals were served. To date, 99 adults have been served in the OVR-supported employment programs. Another OVR program operated by the Bucks IU is the MWI program. The Summer Work program is a collaborative effort that provides work experience to young adults within their local communities. The program benefits the local community by providing extra help to municipalities, local government, and nonprofit agencies. Adults involved in the program receive on-the-job support with a job coach while being exposed to a variety of employment skills. The Bucks IU has provided this program for the past 3 summers with the goal to expand from 2 work sites to 5 next summer. OVR views the Bucks IU as a preferred provider for adult services and regularly shares updates regarding new services. The Bucks IU is currently seeking to add community work instruction on the board agenda, which was on the board agenda that night, and the Work Experience for Adults program this school year, with many other opportunities for program expansion under consideration. By offering services through both ODP and OVR, the Bucks IU can program seamlessly for students transitioning from Bucks IU and district special education programs to adult services across all levels of individualized need. Numerous opportunities for expansion are available, affording the Bucks IU tremendous potential for continued growth. It is a goal of the Adult Programs and Services Division to offer a wide continuum of services in an effort to serve as many adults with disabilities as possible. On that note, we also get a legislative report each month at the IU, and I am going to highlight one of the biggest standout issues, which kind of applies here when you talk about the fact that the IU historically has provided those services to students up through the age of 21. On August 30th, PDE sent out a pen link notice to all school entities in the Commonwealth announcing that effective immediately, PDE was implementing a new policy allowing all students in the Commonwealth who are entitled to a free appropriate public education under the Individuals with Disability Education Act to receive services up to the age of 22. The prior policy stated that a student was entitled to receive FAPE under IDEA through the school year in which the student attained the age of 21. The announcement stated that the policy change was effective immediately and also applied retroactively to any students who attained age 21 during the 22-23 school term. PD announced they were taking this step as part of a settlement agreement reached in the case. There are a lot of legal questions. There's lawsuits coming from other districts who are saying that they didn't have the authority to take one case and then apply it broadly across the entire state. So this is going to be litigated. There's a number of districts already doing that, but in the meantime, those services have to be provided, so anyone who has attained the age of 21 and fell off that, that qualification for services is now qualifies up until age 22. So we'll see where that falls as the court plays this out, but that was definitely a significant piece that's been a big topic of debate. Another thing that we talked about was, and some of the approvals that were on there had to do with some of the professional development opportunities, and some of those things are offered on their website for all the schools across the county to sign up for and take. Some of the fun ones were Zumba, Oxygen Mask First for for health and phys ed teachers, but there's also a lot of professional development opportunities. One, and I just kind of threw out a few highlights: autism and pop culture, ADHD and education, adopting a growth mindset, foundations of gifted education, live, laugh, and learn through educational games, formative assessment, and differentiated classroom. So they have a number of opportunities available for our staff to sign up for as well to get those professional development hours. Another thing I just wanted to highlight is just like the IU came and upgraded all of our services to meet community members' needs, they were able to come to the Upper Bucks County Technical School and do the same thing. And so now community members can, who have hearing impairments, can come and attend those meetings as well and be able to follow the meetings. Another really neat piece of news that came out at the meeting. Angelo Barrios and his hiring made the front page of the Awesome News for the intermediate unit. So again, we thank the intermediate unit for all of their help in that hiring process. It really was a thorough process, and they did a great job in facilitating that. And the last thing I was just going to mention, I won't spend a lot of time, but they have a district support team that they were planning for 23-24, where they go out and they meet with all of the sending districts and they come up with the priorities and things that they're going to work on for the programs and services. So the districts as a whole meet and get together, and they meet individually to come up with what those initiatives are going to be moving forward for the following school year. So We did leave right before I finished the policy part. Just want to update people, the next policy committee meeting will be on October 10th. And the next IU board meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, October 18th.
All right, moving on to the Upper Bucks County Technical School, Mr. Cormack.
Thank you, sir. Exciting news, really exciting news. We have 53 companies that have placements with the tech school students. 26 of those students come from the Pennridge High School. Really exciting news. I think that's great. But to demonstrate what that really means is the Upper Buck Technical School has advanced to the semifinal competition phase of the U.S. Department of Education's Career Z Challenge, expanding work-based learning opportunities for Gen X, or Gen Z, excuse me. The school is now eligible to share $2.5 million in cash prizes, along with access to professional resources, guidance from expert mentors to help implement and expand the UBCTS workforce learning-based system. This is phase 2. You should be aware that UBCTS was chosen 1 out of 81 schools to advance to phase 2. Phase 3 will take place in 2004 in Washington, D.C. So we're looking forward to some great news, but I think this is really exciting to look at the tech school, looking at alternative sources to bring capital to the school to advance the programs that they now offer. That is my report, and our next meeting is October 19th, 2023.
Thank you, Mr. Cormack. And next up, we have a recommendation for action. Basically, it is that the Pennridge School Board of School Directors is asked to complete the attached voting ballot for the 2024 Pennsylvania School Board Association elections. The slate of candidates' biographies and videos are all available. After we all vote, Ms. Chenoweth, who is the board secretary, will register the results by the majority of the quorum on actually tomorrow. So that is, there's no action for that. Just a recommendation for everybody to fill out. Those are in your little envelopes. Please fill those out so Ms. Chenoweth can fill those out and respond. Moving on, next we have public comment.
The first person on the list is Laura Foster, followed by Ms. Kramer.
Laura Foster, East Rockville. So you can listen to anecdotes or you can listen to vetted research. The Education Law Center has made the following statement. There is no evidence that the participation of trans students harms anyone. Anti-trans sports bans and restrictions do nothing to protect girls' rights or address actual ongoing gender inequalities in athletics. Indeed, they only heighten the risk of sex discrimination for all girls who play sports. There is no evidence that permitting transgender and intersex students to play on teams aligned with their gender identity harms anyone. A recent analysis of CDC and prevention data found that there is no negative impact on the participation of girls and women in school sports in states that have implemented trans-inclusive state athletic policies. In fact, early evidence from California and Connecticut suggests that trans-inclusive policies are correlated to increased participation of girls in school sports. In contrast, where states enacted trans-exclusionary policies, girls' overall participation in high school sports declined. Moreover, anti-trans sports bans and restrictions only codify sexist stereotypes of how girls athletes should look or play, which promote body policy of body policy of any student who deviates from this ideal of femininity. Thank you. You act like PIAA wrote the law on gender identity issues in schools. Title IX is the law, not PIAA guidelines. When you're looking to enact this policy, stop going to PIAA and go to Title IX, because that's what you're going to get sued for. You all know that you're going to get sued for this, right? Do you not have enough attorney's fees? Maybe our solicitor would like to comment on the legality of this. In April 2023, the U.S. Department of Education proposed a new rule affirming that Title IX requires that transgender, non-binary, and intersex students be permitted to play sports free from discrimination. The proposed rule makes clear that a categorical ban on trans students participating in sports consistent with their gender identity would not be permitted under Title IX. Why don't you have a discussion about Title IX? Why don't you have a discussion about the actual law that is impacting these students instead of PIAA? Because you're not going to be able to legislate that. I'm sorry, what was your comment? What did you have to say, Ms. Bloom-Grimont? Wait.
AA, PIAA.
Oh, that's, okay, that's the only part you get to respond to on this. Awesome. The level of intelligence.
Thank you, Ms.
profound.
Foster. Appreciate it. Ms. Kramer, is she still here?
I think she left. I saw her walk out.
She's still here. Ms. Kramer? Okay, all right. Ross McClanahan? And then after that, Barbara V's.
Okay, Ross McClanahan, Belltown. You can't bury these expensive legal fees. So today's book ban hearing happened. I was there. It wasn't pretty, it was expensive, okay? Our neighbor school board had $1 million big grift. I'm sure you've read about it, Central Bucks. You are pissing my tax dollars away to support your political agenda. All right, Southern Poverty Law Center. They monitor hate groups and other extremists throughout the United States. Excuse me?
Please be in order. Let him speak, please. Thank you.
They are a hate group, you said?
Mr. McClellan, please
I'm sorry.
direct your...
Okay,
towards
well,
President.
I'm reacting to somebody saying something.
And I ask that person to be in order. Thank you.
Okay. They monitor hate groups and other extremists throughout the United States and expose their activities to the public, the media, and law enforcement, like the KKK or Proud Boys, and now recognizing Moms for Liberty as an anti-government organization. And now we have an article about Pennridge. You talk about indoctrination, and here you force this curriculum on our kids. That's indoctrination. You want facts? You mentioned facts earlier. I'm looking at you. You want facts? Facts are your teachers, administration, students, and the majority of your community do not want Hillsdale curriculum and Jordan Adams. Those are facts. This lengthy Adams report, will we see it?
It's going to be attached.
It'll be attached, okay. Did he charge for defending himself? We're going to pay for that too? Thank you very much.
Barbara V's. And then Bob Sellers.
Barbara V's, Hilltown Township. I want to start by saying that I appreciate the time and the effort that the board puts into this volunteer position. As a Republican candidate for school board director, I'd like to speak on the importance of governing effectively. Although I'm part of a great team of candidates, this is my opinion and I'm speaking only for myself. The Republican slate of school board candidates is a team with different ideas, opinions, and skill sets. However, one thing we have in common is the desire for a new culture of leadership on the Pennridge School Board. Healthy boards have clear lines of communication with board members and the administration while respecting the legal requirement to conduct board business in open meetings. Healthy boards follow the committee process, allowing ample time to read, research, and comment on what will be presented to the public. Healthy boards invite questions and comments from constituents. Healthy boards can lead without creating a culture of fear. Healthy boards cultivate an environment of respect among all stakeholders, from students and parents to taxpayers and teachers. As a new candidate, I've been familiarizing myself with the Pennsylvania School Code as well as our own school board policies. It was interesting to learn that there is a code of conduct for school board members. Specifically, board members are to work together in a spirit of harmony, respect, and cooperation despite differences of opinion. This is what the public expects of us, and it is what our own policies require. Our public meetings should be a reflection of this policy and not be a reason to reference the policy. Come November, I look forward to serving with our Republican slate of candidates, as well as the remaining board members, to welcome this new Board of Culture in order to provide the kind of leadership our community deserves. Thank you.
Mr. Sellers. And after Mr. Sellers, Leah Rash.
Bob Sellers, East Rock Hill. I would like to thank the school board in your unanimous decision to hire Mr. Barrios. I appreciate the board's collaborative effort and in partnership with the Bucks County IU to perform this extensive search and interview process. Mr. Barrios, congratulations, welcome, and thank you. Mr. Barrios, I appreciate the time you spent introducing yourself and answering questions. There were many character points that resonated with me. You were very sincere, open, real, and grounded when referencing moments when a person lacks confidence and doubts, and the power of mentors and leaders. You called it the power of believing and inspiring. You told us the value of your word, that you'll be transparent and honest, you'll be apologetic when you make a mistake, and overall just real with us. You spoke about being a believer in second chances and the importance of first listening and learning. After listening to Mr. Barrios, it was clear I and many of us can learn a great deal from him. In answering the question why, for me it begins in my belief that children are God's greatest gifts. And all of us parents, educators, and the community understand the importance of supporting the student and dedicated teacher environment to achieve academic excellence in preparing students to be successful. As a longtime resident of Pennridge and now Republican candidate, I have the pleasure to listen and talk to our Pennridge neighbors and community. I respect and value the community's involvement and honor parents' rights to be involved in their children's education decisions. It is important that our students continue to focus on traditional education of reading, writing, and arithmetic. These fundamentals are the foundation blocks towards higher education, trade skills, and military service careers. I believe in Pennridge common sense policy, and I do support this board's policy to keep biological boys out of biological girls' bathrooms and locker rooms. I do support biological boys should not play in biological girls' sports. I also supported that all school spaces are to be safe spaces for all students. I value the important relationship between dedicated teachers and their students, and for many of us, teachers have made a permanent positive role in our lives. As a candidate, I appreciated my recent interview and discussion I had with our dedicated teachers, and we share in the importance and commitment of the teacher-student environment to achieve academic excellence. It is important we respect and include all stakeholders, listening and learning, building relationships, and looking for collaborative Pennridge common sense solutions.
Thank you, Mr. Sellers.
Thank you.
Leah Rash and then Stephen Rash.
I just have a couple of things. I'm glad we're looking at top ranking schools for some things. For the wording in PIAA around the word chilling, that definitely is in there, but you failed to recognize the words you did switch, which are probably a little more important. Hillsdale, We all seen the RTKs. We all know there was text the night before to include it. Staff, none of them recommended using Vermilion. So when you guys are up here arguing about it, it's really just a waste of your time and ours. We know the truth. And then as long as we're talking about that, Hillsdale, there are flat out errors in those lesson plans, so you can actively listen and write them down because people have mentioned them multiple times in meetings. Points in there that are flat out wrong. But you don't answer those questions. You don't answer emails. So I will send you the list again of all the things I've found in Hillsdale. I have not emailed it to you yet, but I'll send you. Please respond. Why they're still in there. Thank you.
Stephen Rash and then Heather Young. Okay, Mr. Rash passes. Heather Young. And then Mary Wilson.
Heather Young, Silverdale. So I got to witness our tax dollars at work during a hearing today. I definitely expected better for the price tag, but the district's actions didn't really give her much to work with. It's been almost 2 years of listening to you guys limit students' rights, attack trans children, dismantle social studies, and yet we hear Director Clements state that we talk about our scores and how they're plummeting, but here you guys are trying to fix the curriculum. What social studies scores are you talking about? Because that's the curriculum you're so focused on is social studies. I'm not sure how that plays into the rankings that we're addressing. We knew the sports policy was coming because since this board was elected, Pennridge has no longer stood alone as a public school district in Bucks County. We have not been Pennridge. We have just been subjected to a political checklist, a national political checklist, and this was on it, so we knew you'd bring it. I'm not sure why the discussion is boys on girls teams. Your policy is to stop any potential trans girl from joining a sport in her school. My generation watched girls, with the help of their parents, fight and win the right to play competitive sports in schools. We also fought and wanted to be able to join Boy Scouts. All of your justifications feel extremely insulting to me as a girl. Also, knowing trans children, I don't know who you guys are talking about. I don't know what visions you have in your head of threats to our daughters in the bathroom or threats to our daughters' safety on the softball team. I also know wrestlers who are extremely offended that you would think that because they are males and because they are wrestlers, they cannot distinguish sex or gender from a sport that they excel at, and that they would be offended to have to wrestle anyone of any gender or sex. The PIAA makes clear that there are allowances for girls on boys teams and boys on girls teams. The only 3 examples I keep hearing that the GOP cites are never K through 12 examples, and they're never Pennridge. We heard that feelings aren't a part of this. And then we heard that feelings need to be considered, but not the trans children's feelings, right? Not their feelings. They don't count in any of this. The girl who wants to play on the football team that she aligns with, her feelings don't matter. She's just an open target for you. You guys just swap minorities to target, and it's tiring trying to clean up the violence and suicide that your hate leaves in its wake. You are not addressing Pennridge matters, and it's disgusting to hear these targets. In addition to our dropping rankings, the exodus of faculty that we are recovering from, the bus driver shortage, you have a very real concern at the schools right now of hate speech and bullying, and they are not being treated as forms of harassment or abuse. You've left students feeling unsupported and taking matters into their own hands.
Thank you, Michelle. Mary Wilson? And then after Mary Wilson, Jim Ewell.
One person up there talks about what it's like to be a trans kid in this school.
Thank you very much. Please be in order.
Hi, I guess on.
You're good.
I have never spoken in public before. I'm terrified, but I have sat and listened so many times to the school board. I was home in my pajamas tonight, happy to listen online, and I couldn't handle what I was hearing, all the public comments the first round, everybody singing your praises when we know you ran on fiscal responsibility. You are wasting our tax dollars. $1 million in legal fees so far in a year? Are you kidding me? I had dinner with my children the other night. All three graduated. The youngest is 30. Graduated from Pennridge. They all are college graduates, master's degrees, very successful children. They said, "Mom, what school district are you living in? This is something we have never seen." They grew up saying, "Mom, you're a racist. You can't talk about, a child who's, maybe liking a girl who likes another girl. You can't talk about that like that." I was like, sorry. They were raised in this school district to have respect for everyone. Everyone. When they started hearing about, Jesus loved all the little children, all the different colors of the world, they learned that growing up in their Sunday school classes. I am appalled by what I have seen in the last couple of years here. Okay, question. It's been on the back of my mind since June. Why was Dr. Bolton fired? Yes, I'll say the word, fired. No way he was out on sick leave and you all decided, oh, let's give him 10 years of health insurance. 10 years. I worked 17 years in this school district and I paid almost $1,000 a month to Cobra. Right now, I get a measly $453 in my pension. You all should be ashamed of yourself. I am so furious with y'all. I'd like to know why he was fired and why we've agreed to pay for 10 years of health insurance when I know he had a really nice salary. Thank you.
Jim York and Katie Renee.
Jim York, East Rock Hill Township. I'd like to thank the board for their continued volunteer service and their perseverance to continue to push good policy through like the one that went through the first read tonight. So thank you. I look forward to the opportunity as a current candidate for school board to be able to serve on this board to our community. So I believe in the potential of our students, their abilities and their talents, committed to developing an environment where they can grow and flourish. First, by creating an environment of collaboration where all stakeholders are part of the processes. When stakeholders are given a voice and they truly believe their input is welcomed and heard, they then be able to take ownership of not just the plan, but the results. And it is the results that create change in the classroom to benefit our students. Whether it be by reduced class size, additional teaching aids, reevaluated curriculum, improved environment. I'm confident enough to stand here and say I don't know the exact formula, the exact way to improve and to move us into the next level of education and improve test scores, but I know where to find the answer and I know the people who can develop the plan, and more importantly, or just as important, I'm able to develop a plan to execute and move that ideas into execution. Ideas in and of themselves don't necessarily, and ideologies in and of themselves do not equal results. The results are what our students deserve, and the results is what I plan to bring to our community. Additionally, I believe in allowing the educators to educate and parents to parent. There needs to be clear roles and responsibilities of each, not substitution of each. Myself, I've experienced this here at Pennridge, both as a student and as a parent. As a student, I had great educators preparing me for my college education. Also had great role models. I didn't need to identify with my teachers to be exactly like me, because it was their kindness that led me to want to move on to take the next step. It was their interest in me. It had nothing to do with their identity, but it was how they met me and where they met me, and that they cared too much to leave me where I was because I wasn't on the right track. So thank you for the teachers of the time. And with that, I'll just wrap it up and say thank you, and I look forward to serving on this board.
Katie Renee. After Katie Renee, Mr. Bensick.
Katie Renee, Percy Borough. I was struck as I listened to the comments tonight about how much fear there is in the room. I want to speak on behalf of those of us in the community who are not afraid of transgender students being in school, sharing bathrooms, or playing sports alongside our children. There is a lot to worry about as a parent. This is something that I don't spend any of my time worrying about. As a mom of daughters in the district who have played and will likely continue to play sports, I feel I have a solid standing in sharing my opinion on this discussion. My 6-year-old daughter could take down most 12-year-old boys on a sports field, so chromosomes and private parts don't always determine who needs protection from whom. As a mom, it's my job to advocate for my kids, but I do not believe that my kids are more entitled to privacy or safety or success than anyone else's kids. You're so concerned about a level playing field on the turf. Please extend that to daily life at school for all children in all policies, not just athletics. I'm not afraid that one of my daughter's peers is going to go through a gender transition or fake a gender transition in order to excel at sports. I'm not afraid that one of my daughter's peers is going to transition or fake transition in order to go into the girls' bathroom to commit a crime. Every time I hear someone reference keeping boys out of the girls' bathroom or off a girls' sports team, I find myself wondering why it's more uncomfortable for that person to have a biological male who presents as female in the girls' room or on the field than they are with a male presenting biological female in the girls' room or on the field. I imagine that neither scenario would be acceptable to certain people, which again boils down to fear and exclusion rather than humanity and inclusion. I agree with all those who feel strongly that school sports are important to the student experience and to future opportunities. And that's why every student should have access to play on a team if it is at all feasible. Finding solutions to problems or concerns related to joining a team as they arise with a goal of inclusion sounds like a better solution to me than preemptively excluding a student from participation. Please stop spending your time and my money on this policy discussion. Thank you.
Mr. Bensick, and then Mr. Hogan gets the cleanup spot.
Adam Benchick, East Rock Hill. First, this is a tough topic to talk about. Katie said it so well, but I just want to say how I think it's disgusting that somebody asked about why this was being rushed through now, and it's obvious why it's being rushed through now. You thought you could use it you thought you could use transgender children as a political win, I guess. And it's disgusting, and I doubt anybody really cares who's up there, but yeah, it's sick. The other thing I wanted to talk about was I've seen, and as you all have seen, you've all complained about people who've come up, members of the community who have come up and talked about issues. They've spoken very well about issues like curriculum and policies, and for the last, 6 months, it seems to have been very heated. But there are people who care and who come up and make their feelings known. I think it's pretty shocking to see people show up for the first time and make a comment. It's obviously a stump speech. It didn't have anything to do, like, they didn't make, if they did make a comment about the curriculum, the stuff going on about the curriculum, it was short and in passing. And it was just, it's hard for someone who puts so much energy into the school board, into paying attention, and who is so invested with my kids here. It's hard to see people not take a stance and then come up just because they're up for election in a month. And they decide now that, oh, maybe I should make myself known. But if you listen to what they say, it didn't have much to do about anything at all. It was just a stump speech. At least Mr. Hogan, his stuff scares me, but at least he has made comments in the past. So I do appreciate that. So yeah, it was just kind of shocking to see the politicians come up here and use this time just to do their stump speech. So that's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Hogan.
All right, let's go home. Josh Hogan, West Rock Hill Township. As a nominee on the Protect Pennridge slate of candidates for Pennridge School Board, I'm proud that each of us comes from a different background with our own set of life experiences and diverse perspectives. What unites us is our appreciation for Pennridge and a shared commitment to ensuring that it remains a wonderful place to live. While negativity often dominates politics, we've chosen to run on positivity and a profound love for our community. We firmly believe that Pennridge is worth protecting, and that's more than a bumper sticker platitude to us. It's reflected in the way we've built our campaign team as a fully local, community-led effort with no paid political consultants, outside interest groups, or funding from beyond the district. You won't see shadowy political organizations buying up billboard space to disparage Pennridge on our behalf. Instead, you'll see our hand-painted banners that come straight from Bob Seller's farm. I think that speaks volumes about what we stand for. Thanks to steady Republican leadership, Pennridge stands on solid ground. Our home values are rising faster than neighboring communities. This generates increased development, which fuels growth of local businesses and infrastructure. Most importantly, it increases school district revenue without raising taxes. Pennridge boasts 0 tax increases for 7 straight years, a feat practically unheard of anywhere in Pennsylvania. Yet we're still financially strong enough to substantially increase teacher salaries, hire a promising superintendent who lives in the district, and maintain all the capital projects that keep the district in good shape. This balance is only possible because Pennridge is a place where people want to live, so we continue to grow. This growth and development is a result of Pennridge successfully navigating the difficult issues that other districts can't. We recently became the first district in Bucks County to designate bathrooms on the basis of biological sex. And last year, we passed policies ensuring ideological neutrality and age appropriateness in our school buildings. These actions, which require strong, principled leadership, make people want to live here because they know that protecting students is the district's top priority. That dedication to student success is clear in the numbers. Compared to the state average, our graduation rate is 8% higher, our students excel further in AP courses, and far more of our students pursue higher education or vocational training. In a political climate filled with negativity, Pennridge shines as a beacon of community pride. We believe in preserving the values that make Pennridge a special place to live, work, and raise a family. By investing in our community's future and fostering an environment of growth and prosperity, we will ensure that Pennridge remains vibrant and thriving for generations to come. Pennridge is worth protecting, and we, the Protect Pennridge slate, are dedicated to that mission. Thank you.
That is all with public comment. Moving on, is there any old or new business?
I have old business again, and I know some people think that it's a waste of time, but to me, our entire students' curriculum is not a waste of time. And the 5 board members up here can keep saying that and, wanting to move on from the obvious wrongdoing that occurred with the Vermillion contract, but there was wrongdoing. He should not be in charge of all of our curriculum, and I'm making a motion to terminate his contract effective immediately.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on the floor. comments or questions? And could we have a roll call vote, please?
Just one comment. Please, everyone, read the report that's going to be attached to the agenda. It really is helpful information.
The report does not include anything that explains why he wasn't vetted, why he doesn't have the certifications, why the textbooks didn't get 2/3 of the appropriate approval. No, Megan, he was not vetted. He can't explain his way out of that. He was thrown on an agenda and voted on improperly.
Can we take the vote?
Call for vote.
Mrs. Bennis Clemens?
Yeah, no, sorry.
Ms. Patisky?
Yes.
Mrs. Blondgren?
No.
Mrs. Chaikin?
No.
Mr. Cormack?
No.
Mrs. Cullen?
Yes.
Mr. Russell?
Yes.
Mr. Rice?
No.
Mr. Wers?
Yes.
Motion fails. 5-4.
Mr. Rice, I just wanted to address two things under old business. One, there was a comment about paying insurance. When a superintendent retires, we're actually required to pay that insurance. So I just want to make that clear. This isn't like we're choosing to do that and spend all this extra money. I just want people to know that that is something that we are required to do. And then secondly, I just wanted to give a little bit of background. I feel like sometimes the public hears a lot of things like RTK and some of these topics that aren't necessarily common knowledge to most people in the community. And you know, as there's so many comments dealing with legal bills, I just want to make sure that the community understands when people file a right to know request, all of that information, like you give keywords, those keywords can hit hundreds of thousands of documents. And then to be able to sort through those documents, they have to look at FERPA, make sure that they're not violating and releasing any confidential information about any kids, any confidential information about any employees. So it's not, oh, this, you know, they're spending all this money to try to make sure that information doesn't go out to the public. The board has nothing to do with that. That goes through our right to know officer and our attorneys, and they're literally just looking at what legally goes out, what legally doesn't go out, but it's a really involved process, and when all of these kind of long wild goose chase RTKs constantly come in, they've got to go through all those documents, they've got to pull everything that's confidential out, and that takes time, and people's time is worth money. And I guess the piece that's frustrating for me is sometimes we have people coming in here who are blasting us for the legal bills that they themselves are creating because they're the ones filing all of these things intentionally to run up the bill. So, you know, I just wanted to make that clear because I think sometimes the public is seeing, you know, oh, why not just put the information out there? It's really not that simple. You have to weave through and you have to make sure you're protecting people's confidentiality rights.
Thank you, Ms. Bennis Clemens. The next scheduled school board meeting is scheduled for Monday, October 23rd. Please, before I adjourn, please make sure